Welcome to Daredevil in the Details, a show that explores and dotes on the philosophy and themes of Disney's Daredevil Born Again, a digression collection brought to you by A Method to the Madness and the ZeroIndent Patreon subscribers. I'm author DC McNeil, and this week we're in for two dramatically different episodes. One story about emotional violence and another about physical violence. I'm joined as always by Patrick from A Method to the Madness. Patrick, do you know the significance of St. Paddy's Day for a Protestant?
No. I'll be real. I have no idea about any of that. But I'm just willing to take the show's word for it.
Yeah, it sounds right to me. And once again, we're joined by the man experimenting in the train tracks himself. Darth, what are you doing with all the blood, my friend? What's the deal there?
What am I doing with... Like, I got buckets over in the corner that you can somehow see? Is that what we're talking about?
Okay. If I'm going to keep doing these bits, I might need to send you guys an explainer beforehand. If last week forced us to contend with the Ouroboros of policing in New York City, this episode we're faced with two very different sides of the same coin. This first episode shows us the existential frustration Fisk endures daily as he suffocates the old parts of himself, while the second episode up for discussion is a thrill ride of a bottle episode, showcasing every inch of growth Charlie Cox has achieved during his time away from the show. Before we do anything else, I need to do a first note comparison, because I think this is the first time I've stared at my TV and said out loud, oh my god, Darth was right. Pat, what's your first note that you have for these episodes?
My overall impressions?
What's your first note? What's the first thing you've written down?
Oh, like literally. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the something one of the characters says from the episode 4 where he's like, he's just Hector from the Heights and they're the fucking cops. And I just have that in quotes. Yeah.
Bars, man. Yeah, this kid knows what's up. Darth, what's your first note?
I've got very little about both of these episodes. I was just vibing like really hard on both of them. Really enjoyed the entire bank one. And the blood draining, no, it did not get to me like negatively or anything. And I'm just like, I hope they do something really good with this character down the line, so all of this like really makes sense, because it's like creepy as all get out, and I love it for how they were using it.
Okay. So no, both of you missed it then. So I have, this is in all caps, by the way. This is my first note. It's complete. The grammar doesn't make any sense, but it's just Matt has suit and amulet bag, exclamation point, amulet alert, super strong Matt Murdock just dropped, Darth called it. I was freaking out. I was like, Matt Murdock has the amulet. He's got the amulet. Is he gonna become a super strong boy? And because you remember last episode, you were like, Common L, Daredevil Born Again, why wouldn't you take the amulet that gives you superpowers? And then Matt Murdock is just holding it in the bag in this episode, and I'm like, bro, that's what's up.
Yeah, ironically, I think I meant like the bad guys. Like, why wouldn't the bad guys who killed him take it, and then they would be super bad guys?
I know, but what if the good guys took it?
Yeah, but when he had it, I was like, there's no way he would. Like, he's too much of a goody two-shoes. There's no way that he would actually use it, even though like all of us are screaming at him, you should do this, you idiot.
Yeah, he didn't need
anyway.
it though. You know,
maybe you'd OD on super reflexes. You know, like he's already up there, and like if he also wore the amulet, he would just like start spazzing out.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I was thinking is like, is this a backdoor to make him work in like an Avengers context? Because he would get annihilated in, like, this guy faces off against one of those freaking robots from Age of Ultron. He's paced on the sidewalk. The boy with this amulet, he might have a chance. You know what I mean? So, think about...
That's true. If he ever does go in and do an Avengers context, I hope he like gets some tech from, I don't know, Stark or something.
What upgrade would he need, do you think?
I don't know.
Like
two billy clubs.
A second billy club.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's funny to imagine that as like an Oprah segment where it's like, you know, they call the cast of the new Avengers into Stark Tower, and he's like, and under your chair is a billy club, and you get a billy club, and you get a billy club. It's good stuff. Yeah,
It's kind
let's
of a
do it.
weird like hypothesis that like they've already got Natasha and they've already got Hawkeye. Like they have non-powered people that they've already figured out how to use effectively. So it's not like inconceivable that they could bring him in. And now I want to see it because you said that.
Yeah, this is how it happens. This is what happened with Pat's like season 4 pitch, where I was like, the fact this doesn't exist is kind of getting to me now. Like it kind of getting a little itchy about it. It's a vibe.
I'm all about the cult of Thanos. That is dope. I really like that.
Yeah, you do be bringing that up often. It's been coming up. Do you think? Yeah, I mean, I was obviously doing a bit, but I do think they would just put him in as is. But then they would have to do a lot of work. I think he'd end up being more of like a Captain America type, where he might be sort of saving people and doing like civic intervention rather than fighting bad guys necessarily, potentially. Or they just give him a gun. I don't know. Because a gun is
he'd be like the
superpower.
head of security on the shield floor or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So
You know.
you're imagining like a bureaucratic job.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's in charge of
'Cause
doing
as-
all
I
the soliciting work in the wake of the Avengers incidents, you know?
Yeah, exactly. He's more of a man in a suit than he is in a man in a Daredevil suit. You know what I mean?
Pat, that's so true. And what a great way to segue into these episodes, because that's really what these episodes are all about. Thank you very much. Today we're talking about Daredevil Born Again, episodes 4 and 5. Episode 4, Six Semper Systema, is the first episode we are talking about. Before we get into the summary, high-level thoughts on this very... I don't know, I would call this a conceptual heavy episode. It's a lot of people sitting in chairs talking. And it's a lot of people saying their feelings to each other at last. What did we think about this one? Let's go to Pat first, because this is sort of this is real Pat territory for me, and then the next episode is real Darth territory for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay. I'm the similar to you, Darth. Like I didn't have a whole lot on these episodes. Just yeah, don't quite know what it is. Like a lot of action in the second one, obviously. In the first one, there's like a lot of like heady sort of, I think, not entirely like cohesive like strings of themes going on. Although I feel like the episode 4 is sort of flirting with this, or it's trying to like maybe set up this theme of David's favorite theme about systems producing ideology. And I was like, he's gonna have a lot to say about this.
Yeah, yeah, you know, I was in the lab on this
yeah.
one.
Yeah. The episode 5, the bank robbery, it was very poppy. As to what we were saying like in the previous episodes, like I think this series of Daredevil is like, you know, it's trying to branch out in its like tones, which is, you know, that's not a bad thing by any measure. I thought it was a lot of fun. But it definitely didn't feel like a classic Daredevil episode. But I don't know. Bringing Daredevil into the fold of the main MCU, I think like these episodes like do it great. Like yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I think that thing about like this season of TV being poppy is just something I haven't been able to get out of my head since you said it, because that second episode in particular has the rhythm of a pop song, where it's like it's big chorus and then it's these bridging moments and then it's chorus and then it's bridge and then it's chorus and then it's crescendo. Like it has that same rhythm, in a big way. Yeah, Darth, what about you? What's your high level? I mean, you said that you just were vibing, basically.
Yeah, what's interesting when you said the first of the 2 episodes is mainly everyone sitting around talking, and that's something that I'm like consistently yelling at characters about, like the entire Civil War storyline, where it's the 2 factions of heroes fighting against each other, and I'm just like, sit down and talk. Like punching each other is not going to solve this. You have to sit and talk and have a dialogue. And like so much of this, like even the Fisks having their marital counseling, and I'm like, yes, like they could have done stuff that was higher tension. Like having them having a meal together and having like all kinds of tension just in their interactions with each other that didn't involve the communication. So the fact that there was so much communication throughout the episode just really, really vibed with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that. I will admit, Fisk, someone doing therapy at Fisk is a real jump scare every time it happens. Every time it happens on the screen, it's like the existential horror really settles in. Just this.
It's like, will he tolerate it?
Yeah, it's like trying to do therapy to God. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's phenomenal. Yeah, I mean, let's get into it.
The bit of that though, and I've been wondering what you guys think about it, is the therapy is only supposedly working because he keeps insisting that he's changed, and because we see little hints that he has indeed changed, and thus we're supposed to think, oh, this therapy is actually helping him, and we see some responses of him to the therapist that say, yes, this is probably is going to be helpful down the line in their relationship. Maybe they can repair it. But the whole time I'm like, this is a twist. You know, he hasn't changed. They're going to reveal it eventually. Is that the vibe y'all have gotten this like entire time? Or are we supposed to think he did have this change of heart, and maybe this season is changing his heart back?
I think it's meant to be like a question that you're waiting for the penny to drop kind of thing. And I feel like that does happen with the reveal that he's keeping that dude in a cage or whatever.
Yeah. But I think it's more, I think that's probably right. I think the other thing is that I think Heather is spot on, where at the end of that session that they have, she goes, I want you to think about this, which is like, what is the purpose of this therapy? Is this to fix this marriage or to dissolve this marriage? And that's actually like a really potent question, because if you've been in a toxic relationship, one of the hardest things to do is actually find a way for it to end, right? And, you know, it's never going to end amicably, and it's never going to end in a perfect way, but like actually finding that end point and developing a resolution to those toxic relationships is as hard as repairing a relationship. And I'm curious where the show ends up taking that, because I don't have an answer yet to that question, you know?
Yeah, I guess just what I hope is eventually made clear is whether this entire thing, like, if we go back and rewatch it, will we be able to see that every action was a ploy from the very beginning, or is he at this point sincere? And the difference there is going to recontextualize everything. So that's one reason I'm kind of like focused on it.
I mean, I think the signs are all there already, is my general feeling. I think you could do a reading of this and be like, this is the old Fisk. This is all a facade. I think you could do that reading and you could find that evidence. I think Pat's right. I mean, we get a pretty conclusive answer. He's got her boyfriend in the basement next to Rabbit in a snowstorm. Like, and he's eating an old Fisk meal. This isn't a single piece of asparagus and some creme fraiche. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is old Fisk. He's dining. He's got this dude in a cage. He's got the painting. Like, he's in a little shrine to his old self.
I wonder if it's also like, suggesting like a lot of delusion on Fisk's part. Like, maybe the therapy and the attempts to change your nature are sincere to some degree, but he's just like, he doesn't. I don't know. He's just too Fisk to see that like that is the opposite of trying to improve yourself and get better is the opposite of the actions he's taking, kind of thing. It's like this man is just like, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance going on, basically.
The whole thing could also be like juxtaposing the theme of Daredevil saying, or Matt saying that I have this beast caged up, or I have the devil caged up inside me, and I'm scared that he's going to get out. Whereas now we're seeing that Fisk, like locked up down in his basement, has the devil that is Wilson Fisk and everything that represents Fisk locked up down there, much the same way that Matt did earlier. And this whole thing is working towards Matt letting himself out again so that he can become the devil, and also for Wilson to let himself not just be in the basement being Fisk, but be it publicly.
Well, and that works really well with the inversion with Matt Murdock, where his Daredevil armory is in the attic of his apartment, and he goes up.
Yeah.
Like you can really feel, you can feel Scarter Payne's instincts for how that old show was able to do this kind of symmetry and asymmetry without it ever feeling canny, right? Like, yeah, Fisk descending and Matt ascending, but they're both functionally. It's that question that the show is really about, which is like, to what extent can you escape your fundamental nature? You can keep putting it in these boxes, and you can keep burying it or putting it away and ignoring it. But like at a certain point, you know, can you change fundamentally who you are? And I think that's the question of this therapy, is like, is Fisk actually capable of being a different guy or not? Or is that second face, is that Kingpin inseparable from him in like when that hammer strikes the back of his father's head, is that the moment where forever Kingpin is his other half? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I think it's
I was also thinking that we don't technically know yet, like why Adam is locked up down there. Maybe he's a werewolf. Maybe Fisk is keeping him safe down there.
Oh my god, the copium, bro. Like, actually, what if Fisk is actually a civic servant? What if this guy's dangerous? It's Guantanamo wasn't bad. You locking up bad people is
They're all werewolves.
Fisk has changed. That's all I'm saying. He's a good guy now.
This is madness. This also this does explain the bruised knuckles that we're all kind of hemming and hawing over as well.
Yeah.
Is like, I reckon he done punched Adam real good, beat him up, chucked him in a cage type of thing. That could be.
Or he was defending himself against werewolf Adam. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't. You know, the thing about news is that there's two sides to every story. Oh, dear me. All right, Pat, when you're ready, can we please hear the summary of episode 4, directed by Jeffrey Nachmanoff, written by David Feige and Jess Wigatow. Wigatow. I looked up how to pronounce this, and it's Wigatow, but that sounds really stupid in my accent, so I'm going with Wigatow.
David Feige, no relation?
No relation. Like, actually, he's just that just happens to be his last name. Yeah.
Yeah, I figured. This episode explores the fallout of Hector's trial and death. Fisk and Vanessa continue their cursed therapy by discussing Vanessa's affair with Adam. We see why Heather is good at her job, while she finally reads that Fisk has a deeply violent nature. In a chilling interaction, Heather asks Vanessa if she's ever feared for her safety in her marriage, and for the first time, perhaps Vanessa does not have an answer. Matt pursues a free case for the firm, taking up the petty larceny of Leroy Bradford. Bradford is antagonistic and difficult, putting Matt in an unwinnable exchange with the DA's assistant. So after a brief flirt, Matt barters down to 10 days and probation. Meanwhile, Fisk propels his intention to rebuild Red Hook shipping and textile manufacturing into a domestic powerhouse. But thanks to Daniel Blake's crush on Bibi Urich, the news of union busting tied up in this plan is leaked, and Fisk's plant is exposed as a petty power grab more than anything civic-minded. Later, Matt heads out to where Hector was shot in search of the bullet casing. The casing leads Matt to a disused facility where none other than Frank Castle ambushes him. Frank immediately sees Matt's secret heart. All of this is about Foggy. All of it. The guilt, the anger, the violence. All of it is about Foggy Nelson. Matt leaves, torn once again between two potential selves. The episode concludes with Matt taking the billy club from his armory to practice on the roof, while Fisk eats a dinner across from an imprisoned Adam. Rabbit in a snowstorm looms on the wall. This room is a shrine to the Fisk who was. In a tag, we follow a figure in a white mask who kidnaps a man and appears to drain his blood for some unknown purpose.
Ooh. This won't be in the next episode until the very end either. Ooh, television. Yeah, we just get another fool in a white mask. It's great. Okay, well, if you guys don't have much, I have too much on this first episode, so I'll try and move through it fairly quickly. Once again, this was an episode where I wrote down basically all of the dialogue, so I'm not going to read all of it, but I just want you to know that if you're not watching this show, go and watch this episode. There's another episode full of just absolutely cracking dialogue. The first thing that I do want to,
I want to change something from your description there, because when the therapist asks Vanessa, are you scared of him? She does have something to say, and she says
Darth,
he's capable of many things.
You've sprung
Am
my
I skipping?
trap. No, you've sprung my trap, Darth. I sometimes put little trip mines in the summary just for you, Darth, and that was one of them.
Oh my
Because she gives Vanessa gives Heather an answer, but I think that she's lying because later Fisk asks her like, "Hey," like she asked, he immediately intuits like she asked you if you feel safe in your marriage. And they have this kind of weird exchange where it doesn't really play out in either direction, where she kind of goes like, I never used to or whatever. There's an implication that in being asked that question, it's now planted that seed of doubt. So the trap there is I was like, Darth is going to try and correct this, and I'm going to get to make that point. Because I think she gives an answer to both Fisk and Heather, but I don't think she knows in herself.
Like, the interesting thing is that if one of those were to be the lie, then she would be lying to Fisk, not to the therapist.
Right.
Right? But it's played like it's the opposite. She's lying to the therapist and telling the truth to Fisk that I don't know if I could trust you. But why would that be the case?
Exactly right. Which is why I don't think she has an answer. I don't think that she knows in herself. And at this moment, she did. She was so sure that she never feared for her safety. But then being asked this question has now placed that seed of doubt, if you know what I mean. Like, I think she's like, well, obviously not. But now that, in the context of everything that's been happening, now they're like, actually, she's like, well, is that still true? Like, it had been true. And her answer was right until she provided that answer. And providing that answer produced that question in her mind. If that makes sense.
Okay.
So I think it's both and
well
rather
played.
than one or. Yeah. Thank you.
I have never enjoyed being gotten like that. So
Yeah, you're
well
welcome.
done, Sensei.
Yeah. You have much to learn. The first thing I have is Matt at the hospital where we get Hector's niece. Matt's doing some stuff with like the autopsy and stuff like that. He confirms they don't have the bullet casing. And he, he takes possession of the White Tiger costume and, his effects and things like that, including the amulet.
I was just giggling that they called him to identify the body.
Wow. We're doing blind jokes again? Jesus Christ. This podcast...
actually, that's a very valid point.
Well, he's not there to identify the body. He's there to find out the details of what they found at the crime scene. Because he's looking for the shell casing so we can track the shooter. You guys, he didn't identify the body. Come on.
Fair enough.
Come on now.
But no one else was there.
Yeah, he was Hector's
I guess
lawyer.
maybe Soldad could have come earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know. This slander, the blind slander on this fucking podcast. This okay. Yes, Angela shows up, and she has an absolutely cracking just monologue that, kid actors hard to get right. This kid actor absolutely crushes it, and this sort of she has this monologue that kind of erupts out of her. I don't know if either of you have this one written down, but I definitely did. I think it's just a phenomenal piece of acting and some great writing.
Yeah, she did fantastic.
Yeah, I can give it to you. So she says, so they have she tries to go in to look at the body, and he's like, you don't want to remember her like that. And they have that little exchange about whether or not, like, what happened to him. And she goes, come on, you're a lawyer. You ain't dumb. He got in the middle of something.
Busted up a fight with his mask off. Asshole cops were dirty. You got him out of jail. They put a bullet through his head. You don't gotta be good at math to put one and one together,
I'm sorry.
I hate them, Mr. Murdock. I hate this city. No one's doing anything about it, and no one's ever gonna do anything about it. Because he was just Hector from the Heights, and they're the fucking cops.
And if that doesn't give you goosebumps, then you're not one of us. Truly, because we've spent the last 3 episodes talking about like the institution of policing and the ways that like this insulation occurs within the fraternity of policing, and then just to have a direct victim of that feel that and express it in with such emotion, it makes that real, and it drives it from this theoretical academic thing into something like deeply human. You know, I hate this city. Like it's so elemental. You know, no one's doing anything about it. She's yelling at Matt, because he's one of the only people that can understand it. You know.
I feel like one of the things that charges it as well is that it's a familiar narrative. You know, like it's something that has like happened a lot. Like you know, dirty cops going after someone who has no, you know, who's not in the position or doesn't have the resources to fight back against the system. And I feel like it's, you know, maybe this is expressing the idea with in relation to like the theme of this episode about, you know, how people can't change their nature and stuff. It's like maybe the system also has a nature that is, you know, that is set in its ways and is very, very hard to change. And, you know, that feeling of frustration that character has, Angela was his name. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, yeah, it's the frustration of like, man, like, you know, this sucks. Like, this is not how it has to be, but it's how it is, and it's how it's probably like will continue to be without like a lot of conflict and, you know.
It's like existential in its scope and size. Like it feels immutable. Like this is like trying to undo the nature of the universe type thing to feel. You know.
Yeah, well, if you're someone like Angela, then that they're, you know, the laws of New York and like there's all the systems in place there, like the elaborate complex systems in place that, you know, may as well be like universal laws kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
One thing that I was wondering about is, I want to say that Fisk is the only one that we consistently hear say that he loves this city. Like Matt will say like, this is my city and I protect it and stuff like that. But when she so directly says, I hate this city, it immediately made me think of Fisk, because it's the exact opposite that we know that little piece of dialogue from. And I was wondering if they were somehow trying to intentionally do a comparison between the two. And then another comparison that struck me was that she was complaining that no one was fighting the corruption, although her uncle was the one fighting the corruption. Like, that's how he died. And she's like, no one's doing anything, even though he was the one doing something. So, like, in a way, the way that she was complaining about his death was also dishonoring his death.
Yeah, well, it's like, from her perspective, it's like, well, he died because he was doing the right thing and no one else was backing him up, kind of thing. And like, that's probably where the frustration comes from.
Yeah, and that like this is just allowed to happen because he's just Hector from the Heights, right? Like that he fought back doesn't matter because he's not someone that like what she's saying is that like this is an immigrant who fought against the system, and so no one gives a shit. Until a powerful white guy stands up, and until the rich people stand up and say, fuck these cops, fuck these people who think you're an idiot, who think that they can take everything from you, who think that they can dupe you into convincing you that them taking your money and taking your freedom is good for you. Fuck those people. That's what she's saying. She's like, fuck these people who are sitting around pretending to do charity balls and saying they love this city. They don't fucking know this city. They're not in this city. They sit above this fucking city, right? In a lot of ways, she is talking about people like Fisk, because he's allowed to say, I love this city. Because what he means is, I love what I can get from this city. I love how I can exploit this city. I love how this city lets me get away with it, right? You know, she understands the fundamental nature of it. And I think for Matt, because I had a thought that when you were sort of talking about Matt's relationship to the city, I think Matt's relationship to the city is far more like shamanistic in a lot of ways, like to mean like, you know, sort of like a shaman with nature type of thing, where he almost has this sort of this pagan sort of shaman thing where he is one with the city and that means meeting it where it is and like understanding its nature and moving through it and protecting it, but not necessarily doing that in such a way where he ejects all of the things about it that are dangerous or bad, right? Like, you know, that kind of pagan shamanistic thing. It's like, well, if you walk up to a bear, the bear is going to attack you, but it's not because the bear is evil. It's just the nature of the bear. And I think Matt's relationship to the city is very similar in that regard, where he is just far more tuned in and honest with himself about the city and how it functions, and he's willing to meet it in its reality, and be part of it and have it be part of him, or at least that's how it used to be, and I think it's still within him. That's kind of my feeling anyway, of the positionality there.
Yeah, that's a very, I don't know, it's a very interesting way to put it. I think you're right. Like, I've just never considered that parallel of like a shaman from the jungles of like Indochina and coming to like that parallel for like the concrete jungle of New York or something. That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had that thought last night, and I was like, I better put that in my notes or I'm going to forget it. Because, yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly what it is.
I wanted to say while you were going through that description that it also really screams about Fisk to me. It sounds like very much the same description, only the way that he approaches it is so much different, because like when he sees that bear, he's like, we need to prune these. We need to get rid of everything that is overly aggressive and only have the ones that deserve to be here. So he still is the shaman in the same way, but he's going to like use blood to bring about a better version, even though he feels a connection in that like spiritual way that
Do
Matt
you
does.
believe that? I don't believe that.
Well,
I think he's the
I
bear.
feel like in this analogy, Fisk is like a warlord. He's a local warlord who thinks he's like a, you know, man of the people shaman type of figure, where Matt is the actual guy who's like
he wants to chop the forest down and build like his empire in its place with its pieces, right?
I could say that I think that he has that mindset, but the what drives it is different. What drives it is selfish, like you were saying. So he thinks that he has this spiritual connection to the city, because to me that's how he talks about it. There's such a reverence there. But it probably is all just his own, like he sees what the city can do for him, like you said, and he sees what he can profit and how he could rule. He sees all this stuff, but then he's forming it in this like religious reverence so that he doesn't feel bad about like being the bad guy.
Yes. I
So
think that's
like
right.
to me, I still see it as like he's the same as Matt, but they're just approaching it from different perspectives, but they both have this reverence for the same thing, and it just comes from different places.
Yes. Yeah. I think the difference for me is like, I think that therefore that makes it a different thing. Like I'm with you right up until the end, where like for me then it's like, well, that's actually a different thing then, because what you do to me is far more important than what you say you believe in or what you say, right? Like what you do with the power and the influence that you have and the time that you have, that is far more important to me than like the reason why you say you're doing things. So like that to me is where we diverge, I think, a little bit, where like I agree that they both present aesthetically the same reverence for the city, but I do disagree on the point that like it's the same shamanistic relationship. Yeah, I that's just my feeling anyway. But I see where you're coming from, and I completely understand that reading. Yeah. All right. Well, we should probably like try and talk about more of the episode. Who is this dude in a white mask? Like, he's got like paint or blood on around the eyes. I don't know who this fool is or what he's doing.
It
He's
is
got,
such
like,
a good mask.
It's
That
such
is
a good
so
mask.
cool.
It's so much. It makes me think that they made the White Tiger's mask a little bit doofy on purpose so that this could hit so hard. You know, like this is like an electric guitar. If the White Tiger's mask was like a ukulele. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Like Hector is so cool, like without the suit on.
Yeah.
And then he puts on the suit, and I'm like, bro.
He's got some random dude's body. Like, what is going on with this guy?
You talking about the end card?
The what?
Does he show up in the middle of the episode?
Yeah, he's like literally in this interstitial scene. So it goes from Angela and Matt at the hospital to then just this dude, because it's him taking the body across the train tracks, and then the tag is him draining the blood.
Right. Okay, I got that mixed up then. Yeah.
I want to say that we had some foreshadowing somewhere, and I don't remember if it was like a TV or a newspaper or something that was like people have been disappearing. I don't know that just popped up out of nowhere.
Okay, I buy that. Or if that's not true, it makes sense. It's fucking New York City, and it's under Fisk rule. Like you know this place is getting worse. I did have a thought, which is the eye stuff kind of has like Rorschach energy, and I don't mean the character, I mean like the ink blobs. Which then made me go therapy, which then made me go, is this going to be that kid that came up to Heather at the book signing and was like, I need help? Is that this? You know what I mean?
I mean, it has to be, because we haven't seen any other characters that it could be.
It's Daniel Blake. the gormless office dweeb.
If it is that kid that came up to Heather, that reminds me so much of do you guys ever see that show The Patient?
No. What is that?
With
The Patient.
The guy from The Office, Steve Carrell. He's like a therapist, and he gets kidnapped by one of his patients who turns out to be a serial killer.
That's cool.
And he's like got him in his basement, and he's like, it's like a 9-episode thing of like he's chained up and he's trying to he's forced to do therapy for the serial killer.
That's awesome.
That's
dude.
a really good show.
This is a loaded cast. Linda Emmons, Steve Carell, Donald Gleason, Andrew Leeds, David Allen Greer.
I would highly recommend.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's that would be like the same relationship.
We haven't talked about Steve Carell's absolute glow up as a dramatic actor in the back half of his career. He's incredible in everything he's in. Did you watch The Morning Show? That sort of limited run drama that he's in?
No.
I was about to be
Apple
like
TV?
every morning, dude.
Every morning, bro. So he plays this guy who's like the lead anchor on The Morning Show, and he's like kind of a he's like really charming, and he's like that kind of off-putting charming of that generation where he's sort of a bit flirty with everyone, but everyone knows it's not really serious. And he gets Me Too'd because it turns out that he's sort of used his power to have sex with all of these women. And initially he's like, I'm innocent, this is ridiculous, and he gets canceled, and they bring in a another anchor who's a female, and there's a lot of drama and stuff like that. And the whole first season, it's a story of him like trying to find a way to redeem himself. And as this is happening, we get flashbacks to one of the current assistants on the show and her exchange with him, where he effectively they go through this really traumatic event in these LA wildfires, and they sort of go up to his apartment, and he rapes her. And it's this really confronting moment where you sort of watch this happening concurrent to him being like, well, I'm not a real predator. Like, there are real predators out there. Like, I'm not a bad guy. And, it's just brilliant. And he plays his character so well. This character who is so convinced that he is right up until the last minute. It's really great. Highly recommend.
I can totally see him playing that character. Like, that's why I was laughing before, because like I feel like that is just like as a very perfect casting. But also that reminds me a lot of like it's a very like BoJack Horseman kind of arc, isn't it?
Oh my god, Steve Carell could have been BoJack Horseman. That would be pitch perfect casting. Just to be honest with you.
Daredevil.
Yeah. We are talking about Daredevil, aren't we?
Anyway, we go to the club with BB Urich and Daniel Blake, and guys, I have to be real with you. Daniel Blake, I hate this guy, and I understand what the show is doing. I hate this man. This man who's like, I can't do another shot because I gotta go to work tomorrow. Like, I'm a work guy. You know, he's this close to being a wife guy. These work guys become wife guys so quickly. All he needs is for BB Urich to throw him a bone, and he'll be like bought in for life wife guy. It drives me crazy. This makes me insane. This character.
You're over here like real men. They don't stop drinking.
So the most Australian energy ever to be like, well, you do the shot, obviously.
Yeah.
You said you see what the show is trying to do. What's it trying to do?
So, Fisk got shot in the head by his previous surrogate daughter, which we've all forgotten about because none of us saw that show, except for Patrick. And Pat sort of...
And because there's no hole in his head. That's why we forget about it.
Well, he's got the scar. Pat Men in Blacked himself out of that TV show. Like, he just gone from his brain. I think what they're trying to do is set up a... they're trying to give the face of Fisk, and by that I mean his facade. They're trying to give the face of Fisk a surrogate son that he can mentor, so that at some later point, the sort of kingpin, the other face of Fisk will reveal itself to this kid. And I think if I was writing this show, I would have Fisk eventually have to kill this kid because this kid finds out too much, or he learns too much and he's going to spill it to BB. And Fisk has to kill this kid, and ultimately killing this kid is going to be the thing that destroys his marriage, and blows up whatever semblance of civility he had left. And I think BB would then write the story anyway, like it wouldn't matter. It would be a futile act. That's my feeling of what I think. That's the type of thing this show would do with this character, I feel.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's too similar to another adjacent superhero show that I watched recently. I will not say anything more than that.
Because you don't want to spoil it?
Yeah.
Okay. Patrick with the, like, that's interesting. I mean, there's about 12 superhero TV shows that are, like, about dads, but...
Yeah, I know.
There's two that I can think of where I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. I can't even ask, like, what... I'm not going to say.
It's Miss Marvel. He's talking about Miss Marvel.
He's Miss Marvel, yeah.
No.
Wait, I can always bleep it.
Not Marvel.
What am I talking about? I edit this. I can bleep it.
Well, I also don't want to spoil it for, like, you and Darth. Like, I mean, do you care, Darth?
Is it animated?
No.
I don't know
okay,
what show it is
about,
to not care about it or care about it.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Darth's never going to watch that, so it's fine.
Wait, is that a show? Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Do you know with
No?
it's set in like the
Oh yeah. I do. Never mind, forget that. I do.
Yeah.
I'll watch it eventually.
it's basically what you just described, Evan.
And it's really good too. Yeah. How good is she's good in everything, but like I thought she fucking stole that show as the like
Oh yeah.
crazy niece.
She was so good.
The serial killer niece. Awesome stuff.
Yeah, it's like she was born to play that role.
100%. All right, so we kind of I'm just gonna move us through some material here because there's a lot that happens in this episode that isn't super relevant. There's two big things. There's the therapy, which we'll talk about in a sec, which we've already kind of danced around at the start, and then there's this dude who gets caught shoplifting, Bradford. Maybe let's talk about Bradford's case first because I think it is doing something with Hector's death. And I was really curious, Pat, what you made of Leroy Bradford's case. He gets caught stealing 5 boxes of cereal, and he basically makes this pretty, in retrospect, compelling argument that like his past, they always use his past to make his charges worse. And he's like I only will take I'll take probation, nothing else. Matt goes to the DA, does a bit of a flirt, manages to get the jail time down to 10 days. And then he bumps into Powell, and Powell offers a threat. Powell was the cop from the previous episode. And when Matt goes back to Leroy is like mad at him. And he delivers this crackling monologue that we'll get to in a minute. But I guess I'm curious, Pat, what you make of this inclusion in light of Hector and where Matt's head is at with this case.
Yeah, like in relation to Hector, like that's what I'm quite confused about. So I think you're right. Like he does make a compelling case, and you know, like the social commentary is quite like straightforward, and I think like it all works. Like you know, in that scene, like you feel what Leroy's feeling, stuff like that. But yeah, I'm just confused its placement, like the show, because I feel like this is what I would expect more out of like Better Call Saul, for example, than
Yeah.
Daredevil. And both shows, they're both lawyery shows about you know the system of law and stuff like that. But just has the energy of like how would you describe it? Like it's just one of those strange, banal, like esoteric human stories, you know, just about like this really, you know, like hopeless guy. Like he just doesn't think about consequences. He can't take care of himself, kind of thing. And as he says, like the system spends 5 times more money to punish him than it does to take care of him, kind of thing. Yes, it is about some guy being, you know, beat down by the system. But yeah, I just don't quite think it like it rhymes with the rest of like the Daredevil specifically. And yeah, in relation to like Hector Ayala, I don't know. Again, like it's just, you know, a guy like on the, you know, lower like socioeconomic ladder rung that's like being like, you know, jerked around by the system. Like I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I had a very similar feeling. Darth, I don't know what do you make of this, and then I'll give you the 2 important monologues, I guess.
I also am not seeing the connection with Hector, so looking forward to that explanation. I had at first I thought this was going to go somewhere really, really interesting, but I ended up hating this entire little subplot because like everything that this convict was complaining about was like he caused it. Yes, the system that he is living in is not fair to him, but like he did the initial robbery years ago that got him on parole, that did this, which now this is like a second or third or whatever offense, and he only stole the bag of chips because he wanted it. Like, and then he's like, Matt is trying to help him as best he can, and the guy refuses to accept that this is the best that can happen, and he's antagonistic towards the guy trying to help him. Like, everything that happens here makes me not care about this guy seeing justice, because there's no justice when he does it to himself.
Now, normally this would be some socialism bullshit about how property isn't real and that stealing isn't actually a thing. I'm not going to do that today. I'll save that for next episode. But because next episode's a bank robbery. That's a joke. Anyway, whatever. Look, I think there's a couple things happening. If you have to explain the joke, is it really funny?
I do the jokes.
Because it's a bank robbery. Anyway, so I think there's a couple things happening here, and I don't think they all quite knit together fully. So I think I'm in agreement with both of you. I think what this is trying to do, if I had to sort of take a pitch here, is this guy is pretty disagreeable. He's kind of a dick to Matt. Contrasted with Hector, who is warm and loving and articulate and thoughtful. I think this is trying to put Matt in a position of asking himself who deserves the full attention and the full defense from a defense attorney. Matt has taken on all kinds of cases before that have dubious morals and things like that. But this is one of the few times he's taken on a case where he just doesn't like the guy he's defending. You know, this is very different than in season 1 where he defends that obvious assassin, you know, that ultimately Matt ends up getting killed. It's very different than him defending Frank Castle. This is him defending a guy who he just doesn't like. And what I think is interesting is if you think about Angela's monologue at the start about Hector, where she's basically saying, no one fucking stands up and does anything. Nothing is ever fucking changing. This guy is saying to Matt, I want you to fucking do something and make something change for me. Like, because that's the point of the serial, right? Is it's trying to make any fucking change in your life. One of the things that drives me absolutely batshit crazy is when people talk about people experiencing homelessness and the way that they give money to those people. I was at a bar sort of about 2 years ago with, I don't want to say who, but we were at the bar and talking to someone, and the topic came up that we both happened to work in roughly the same part of the city. And, you know, they went, have you met such and such a person who at the time was experiencing homelessness? I was like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. I think Junior was the guy's name. Really, really lovely guy. She goes, oh, yeah, you know, whenever I see him, you know, I always make sure that, you know, I take him to 7-Eleven and I buy him a coffee. And I was like, oh, why don't you just give him money? She goes, oh, well, and this is I think you both mentally filled in the blank of what this person was going to say, which is, well, how do I know he's not going to spend that on cigarettes or booze or whatever? And the thing I find really frustrating about that as a rhetorical position is, hey, if you're experiencing homelessness, your life isn't in a great place right now. There are lots of reasons why you can be in that position. That doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't also have access to want and to, you know, have some reprieve from reality, whatever that is. I'm not necessarily saying that those are like healthy things to do, and I don't think that like any of us would agree that like, you know, if giving an alcoholic a beer is like a bad idea. But pleasure and relief is something that every single human being is owed. This character is saying, like, I needed something, anything. And this was the thing that it was the one thing. And it was the one thing. And he says, just once I wanted dessert, something that don't taste like crap, something that tastes real good.
So why not get the caramel corn? I like that shit and it tastes good. And for that, they're willing to spend 5 times more to lock me up than they're willing to spend to feed me. And you come in here and tell me that that's a gift? That I should thank you?
You're right.
It don't matter anyway.
And like, Leroy is right. Leroy is correct. And this is the really difficult thing, is that it's an ugly truth and it's an ugly thing to grapple with, and it's not pleasant, and it doesn't fit into like a clean, moralistic view of the universe or of the world or of how laws work. But he is just right. And I think this is the show challenging Matt to make a change and to try, or to at least try and push against the system in the way that Angela describes. And, you know, he ostensibly fails, and he presents it like he's done a great thing. And so to me, I think that is what this show is trying to put in conversation here, is if the devastation of the previous episode is that Hector winning, and then winning Hector's case didn't matter because he got shot by the system anyway, this is a much smaller death, in some ways, and a much smaller tragedy, but it's a tragedy built of the same problem, right? You know, the monologue he gives is he says, you just don't get it, do you? This shit never ends. I've been jerked around by the system my whole life. Last time I got 30 days, you know what happened? I missed my SSI appointment and they cut my benefits. Bad enough trying to live off food stamps, but when they cut it, man, it takes forever to get that shit back regular. Then you gotta start eating throwaway crap from supermarket dumpsters, begging for change, for food. And then he talks about the dessert. I think it's all trying to knit together. I can make it work when I talk about it like that. I don't know that the show quite gets there. But that is my feeling on what this is trying to do.
I think the problem was that the entire subplot of that started with, I don't remember who the other character was, but you see that, I want to say it may have been BB, but you see a like girl get into a car, and then as she's getting in the car drives away, you see the cops standing there like eating the snacks with this dude in handcuffs, right? Yeah. Like, if and one of them is like, you shouldn't be eating that, you didn't pay for it. Like, if the entire thing
he says
hadn't
that to
been
the
this
cop.
guy stealing,
Leroy says that to the cop.
So if Leroy had not actually stolen the stuff, then I think all of this stuff, the entire scene, would have made sense, because now it is back to the corrupt cops and the system are the problem. But because he stole, and he stole before, like, the problem that he's describing is also, like, not just the system, but it's himself. Like, he's describing, I am part of the problem, and he's yelling at Matt that he's not fixing the problem, but he's part of what needs to be fixed. So if change the whole thing to the cops did the crime and he just is framed, or they're picking on him or whatever, and now it fits within the theme that they're trying to go for with the, you know, corrupt system.
I think that the problem here
that
is
removes so much nuance.
Yeah. The problem here is that we fundamentally disagree about stealing. You go, Pat.
Well, it's just the fact that he did do it, and, like, you know, it's very obvious, and he explains, like, you know, why he did it and stuff like that. That complication is, you know, exactly that like messiness, that ugliness of, like, of, you know, someone who did do the crime, but, like, you know, it's like they just have a bunch of, like, stuff going on, you know, in their head, and then, like, they need more, they need help outside of what is going on in this process of prosecuting him. I feel like that is exactly why I think it belongs in, like, Better Call Saul, where it's a show about, like, people and, like, you know, like the strange and messy, like, quirks of people, and how that interacts with, like, law and stuff like that. And yeah, like, okay, I think I see where you're going with that. And I feel like it's contrasted against, like, when he goes to see that, like, woman who he has like this weird chemistry with, and she has, like, this very, like, dogmatic, like, acceptance of, like, how the system currently is, and, like, and then you know, there's, like, other vox pops throughout the episodes of, like, you know, people either accepting or rejecting the system, and, like, you know, like, that guy's like, yeah, I think, you know, superheroes should do all the work that the cops do and stuff like that.
Yeah. I do think that it does miss. I think that it just misses what it's trying to do. And obviously, philosophically, Darth, I think one of the challenges here is that there's a fundamental component of this, which is, like, the messiness of him actually having done the crime makes this work for me more, because I don't think that the crime was, like, morally bad. Like, I think there's an ocean between what is legal and what is right. And, like, in this context, you know, they're willing to spend 5 times more to, like, put me away than the fucking like, are you kidding me? Like, how corrupt does your system have to get? How so fucking focused on capital does your entire universe have to be that makes any fucking sense? Like, it's dismal. It's embarrassing.
I know. I don't disagree with that at all. I completely agree that I am not at all talking about a moral issue. It is, and probably one of the reasons that I'm stuck on this is because it's the entire discussion between all of Frank and Matt's interactions is where is the line? How far are you willing to go? And, like, now we're back to there, and with the law, like, there isn't a line. It's dictated. If you do this, then it is theft, and morals have absolutely nothing to do with it. It is very clearly defined. So that's why I keep saying he did the thing, he should pay, even though, like, if I'm the shop owner, I'm not pressing charges for that. I'm like, do you need more? Do you need more food? Like, I'm not saying that he, you know, should have been charged, but because he did the thing, the law is black and white.
Which I think that was Pat. That's Pat's sort of point as well, which is, like, that's what makes this complicated. Is that, like, it's black and white and it's wrong, right? Like, and that is a difficult thing, I think, for a lot of people to grapple with. I'm not describing you, Darth. I'm talking about people. It just in my experience, because you spend your entire life. And I'm not saying that, like, the coins drop away from your eyes at some point. Certainly that does happen for some people. But, you know, most people spend most of their lives with the assumption and the conflation that, like, if something's a law, then it's morally just. And if you break that law, that's, like, a morally bad thing to do. I think a lot of people, particularly middle class, upper class people, they just live their entire lives with that as the supposition, because most of society is built on that as sort of the underlying foundation that makes things go. That's like the lie at the heart of society, is that those things are like intangible laws of the universe. And that's what Angela's talking about, which is like, nothing is changing. No one is doing anything. And the thing that I struggle with is, I think we just needed something. I don't know. We needed something else in that Frank scene, which we'll get to in a second after we talk about the therapy. We kind of need something else in that Frank scene about the police, because the other thing we get during this little subplot is Matt bumps into Powell. And Powell is the partner of the cop that Hector killed, who insists that he didn't kill Hector. He goes, "You can't see this badge, counselor," and this is like next level rude, by the way. "You can't see this badge, counselor, because you're fucking blind. But my grandfather wore this badge. My father wore this badge. My brother wears this badge. 4 of my fucking cousins wear this badge. They're all knuckleheads, but they're good cops. So I wear this fucking badge with honor, counselor. And I don't know nothing to do with what happened to Hector Ayala. But here's something that I know. An attorney who assaults a police officer, who obstructs an active investigation, not something that the Bar Association's going to take lightly, if you catch my meaning. Not to mention some of my more excitable colleagues on the force." And it's like, this show, and this episode, the reason why David Feige has no relation, Pat, is that David Feige used to be a defense attorney in New York, and he wrote one of the seminal books that is kind of used as the underlying foundation for how a lot of TV writes about law procedurals. His 2006 book, Indefensible, One Lawyer's Journey into the Inferno of American Justice. And I think you can feel Feige as a lead writer on this episode, really having a pretty catastrophically accurate view of the way that police think about and talk about themselves. He's saying, like, "I wear this badge with honor." Meanwhile, this dude gets locked up for stealing 5 boxes of cereals, and the fucking cops stand there and eat it. There's nothing honorable about these police. Nothing honorable. Not among one of them is there anything honorable in this season of TV so far. I think it's a pretty glaring indictment of this system and the things that the types of people that it produces and the ideology that it exerts on the people within it and the people outside of it.
It was terrifying when he goes on about how many of his family members are cops. I'm like,
Oh.
damn, you just know that's like a thing that's like, that's a common enough thing to, be like an archetype of someone like this, like an Officer Powell character, where the whole family's in the police force, and it's like, damn, you reckon they'd have like some sort of processes in place that make it like harder for that kind of insulation to happen? Well, ideally they should be.
This dude, this dude was like raised on this fucking propaganda. Yeah. I was on a date with a girl a couple years ago, and she was telling me that her brother was a cop, and so was her dad, and so was her like uncle. And I was like, I need to get out of here. I need to get out of here, man. This ain't gonna work out. Yeah. So I think, just to put a pin in all of that, I do think it misses a trick. I made that sound a lot more cohesive than it actually is in the episode. But there's a few really interesting articles that could be written sort of around this and to what extent it gets it right, is my general feeling. And I might actually write one of those, in the next 2 weeks, because I this is a really important topic to me personally. And I feel very strongly, as you might have gathered. So I might sort of dig into that more and see what I can pull out.
I mean, to be clear, I enjoy everything about it and your description of it. It does not fit here, in my opinion.
I agree with that. I think that they almost get it though. Pat was saying this feels like an episode of Better Call Saul. I kind of felt like that with the Hector trial episode as well. It was just an episode out of a different show, which I think you get with people like David Feige in the writer's room, where he's able to be like, let's make this a law procedural. Because Pat, wasn't that one of the biggest complaints about the focus group testing with the initial retooling, was that it was too lawyer focused? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I remember hearing that.
And so what's kind of funny is they just have kept all of that. They're like, no, it's still that, but we're gonna, maybe in their initial version, Hector isn't a superhero vigilante. You know, he's just some guy. You know, there's lots of ways you could imagine this being less tied together. Let's talk about...
That was a relationship of the writers in Better Call Saul as well. As Vince Gilligan, who was like the artsy creative type, and then Peter Gould, who actually had a background in law, and that's why that show feels the way it does.
Yeah, there's a really good there's a really great interview with Tony Gilroy off the back of, it's just before Andor, and someone's asking about Michael Clayton, because Michael Clayton is very much again also a story about lawyers, and you know, Gilroy's like, well, my job is to come in there and to make all the character drama work and make all the, you know, as you said, Pat, the artsy stuff work. I mean, he's like, and then I just get people that know what they're talking about to come in and help fill out the lawyer stuff. And a writer like that is similar to Gilligan. They're both very interested in institutions and how they work. And this show is very similar in that regard. It's very interested in how these institutions function, the people they produce, the people that they chew up, and what you need to sacrifice in order to be successful within these institutions, you know? Yeah. All right, let's talk about Fisk and Vanessa. We've already talked a little bit about this at the start. I'm not sure that if you have much that you guys want to touch on here. I do have two things from Vanessa that I thought were really curious characterization. We talked at the start about Adam and like the fact that comes up, and there's this absolutely, it made my skin crawl type moment where Heather presses Vanessa to talk about Adam, and Fisk is like, is this necessary? And she's like, no, like, let's let Vanessa talk. And I was like, ugh. Like, it was the most I felt like I was intruding on someone's actual therapy.
Well, and there's this funny joke that I like where she says, and where is Adam now? And both of them at the same time go, I don't know. And obviously she's not asking Fisk, but it's so telling and suspicious that Fisk feels compelled to answer that question.
It's so
I don't know where he is.
Well, they do that before as well, because she starts by going, it was his hands. His hands drew beautiful sketches. I mean, and then Fisk is like, can we not? And she goes, it was like finding a Klee at a garage sale. It was just, and then she does like a sigh. And I was like, ugh. She goes, he wasn't part of my husband's world. She goes, and Heather goes, and what world is that? Politics. And then together, she and Fisk both say business. Like,
yeah.
It's funny how much on the same wavelength they are about Adam. And the bit that I really like is Vanessa, and I'm interested to see how this lands for you, Darth, because this is the type of character writing that I feel this is the type of thing that you and I would have a big argument about 5 years ago, whereas now we probably feel the same way about, which is, she goes on with this little extra detail where she says, my father, he was in textiles. He would leave for weeks at a time. He drank. He gambled. His behavior ate at my mother, crushed her. I never respected her for that. I needed to feel alive, not crushed down. When you left, you hurt me.
And how am I supposed to feel about this?
Well, so I feel like previous Darth would have been like... Well, see, I feel like current Darth would feel nothing about this. Previous Darth would have been like, this is like exposition and unnecessary and like, why are they doing this? Like, I feel like you would have been like, logically, it doesn't make sense for her to say this.
I started to say, like, I could see that, but this is a therapy session. Like, this is literally what you're supposed to say to this person at this point in time. So if she was saying this to, you know, the checkout clerk at the grocery store, then I'd be like, this is needless exposition. This is so stupid. But because it's in this setting, it totally vibes and makes sense. What was interesting that I'm pretty sure, like, right after that, Fisk is like, you never told me about this.
Yeah, and she goes, I never had... She says something like, I never had a reason to or something.
Which is interesting because I think that you had said a second ago that they're the way that they immediately both answered the same way twice in a row was them being on the same page about Adam, but I think that was actually just showing that they are on the same page with each other, that they have a super strong relationship and they know each other so well that they could immediately give the same answer without meaning to. And so you're comparing that with them being on the same wavelength to him not knowing something that's so integral to her past and her like current mindset.
You're imagining a different version of this show where they play the Newlyweds game? Do you know the Newlyweds game, Darth? Do you know
It would
this
be
game,
really
Pat?
funny to see Fisk play that.
Is it like a thing to like how much do you know your spouse kind of thing?
Yeah, it's like you basically both have like a little whiteboard and you get asked the same question about your partner, and then you both have to write it down without looking, and then, you know, show the thing. There's a really great episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine where they make Jake and Amy do it, but it's like a debate format, and Jake just gets all of them wrong. It's a good TV show. I did also just have the funny thought when you were like saying it to a checkout clerk. My brain immediately went to another version of this show where Vanessa is saying that to the checkout clerk, but it's the same like bodega where Leroy gets arrested, and it's like happening at the same time. That would be like the most. I feel like that would be a Breaking Bad type maneuver. To have that physical proximity, but have no like aesthetic or thematic relationship.
There was something that happened, like I said, and I need to go back and watch it again, because there is like one story flows into the other, but I can't remember what the first one was of who gets in the car that flows into the Leroy one.
I did think that was a weird cut. Like I agree with you that was a weird opening to that scene. I did also mentally note that was weird, and I do think it was BB, and I think that's why I was confused. Yeah.
Was it when Daniel gets into the taxi and then the camera keeps going and then?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
It may have been.
Yeah.
And I thought what they were going to play towards is that whoever that was getting in the car saw this out of the corner of their eye and then could later be a witness that, oh, this guy didn't do it because I saw him on the curb, whatever. But obviously that's not where it went.
Right. Instead, we get the disastrous night out with Daniel Blake. The one thing that I do want to call out something, because I've been picking up on it as it's been coming out throughout this show, which is the return of some of the old Fisk language that kind of sneaks its way in, where, you know, we learn that Wilson confronted Adam with a clarifying dialogue.
I love that.
And the line that I love is Fisk says, "There was no expression of ill intent." And it's that ill intent that we talk about from season 1, that comes back in season 2, that comes back in season 3, and it's here again. I love this show's insistence on holding on to the epic parts of the story, even as it is a kind of a pop remix of that kind. And I use epic in that term to mean the genre term, not like, that's epic, man. That was my impression of a normal person. That feels really disrespectful. But yeah, I just wanted to call that out because I did notice it, is the return of that language. And it's that language that triggers Heather to ask Vanessa if she feels safe in her marriage. And actually, I didn't ask you guys this at the start, and I meant to when we were talking about it. Do you guys think Fisk would ever hurt Vanessa? That he is capable of doing that?
I mean, no, I don't think so. But like, Vanessa is an exception.
Yeah, my answer would instinctively be no. However, anyone can get into a rage and do things that they would not normally do. So if he got to that point somehow, then he could do it without realizing what he's doing. But if he was conscious of his actions, then I don't think so. Unless she super, super duper betrayed him.
I was sort of thinking, like, what would be an interesting project for a season 2? Not that I necessarily, like, when they do more of this, I will watch the shit out of it. But, like, also, if they just did this one season, I'd be happy. I think that an interesting project for another season or another version of the show would be torturing Fisk into a place where he's willing to do that. I don't know how you do it. I don't know what levers you'd have to pull, but pushing him into that place where it's possible for him to hurt Vanessa could be a really interesting challenge in a writer's room. It could make for some really compelling TV. You know, similar to what we were talking about with Blake. Yeah, could be interesting.
Well, they need to have something to fight over, and then therefore my mind goes to a kid. What if they had a kid and she wanted to, you know, take the kid or something like that?
Right.
Well, the pieces are already there to build what you just described, because she was whole, and she liked being the business leader of his underground illegal stuff, and at this point, having lost that, it's like she is no longer herself anymore. And what if she went and got that back without his permission, took up like half of the city, and now she is a rival to Fisk, even though she doesn't really see herself that way, but he sees her that way, and she won't give it up because this is who she is and she needs it. And now he's like, I have to stop her, but I can't stop her because she won't listen to me. So then he has to physically confront her.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because
What
it's
if
something
Vanessa
they both
bossed so hard.
like, they both inherently need this control, and it would lead to a confrontation.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, that's an interesting thought experiment to be like, how would you do that maneuver? It would take a lot of work, but I think you could get there. The next thing, so we go from this. Fisk is having the worst week. He's then forced to sit through these like middling choir performances from children. And it starts. It's so funny. This is such a good joke. It starts with the kids and they're singing "We Built This City on Rock and Roll," and it's really bad. And then he goes to like I don't know. They were like, it's like a Jewish something. I don't understand enough about New York. And
It's Latvian Heritage Day.
Latvian Heritage Day,
And
and they're
they're in,
singing
like,
a
a-
Latvian version
yeah.
of "We Built This City." It's so funny.
That was a good joke.
This is all happening while it's come out that his plans with Red Hook have been exposed, or that happens after. I can't remember. Yeah, because Daniel Blake accidentally revealed it to BB Urich at the club when he was being his gormless self, and so she's written this expose that drives at the heart of what this thing is really about, which is union busting, which is like chef's kiss. This show really understands capital and labor, and the relationship between wage capital and labor. I was like, yes, like of course it's about union busting.
Can you explain that to me? Like when Daniel is at the club and he's talking about no, it's this brilliant plan. We'll have like dual jurisdiction on the ports and stuff like that. I don't understand what is their plan at the ports and how is it related to union busting?
It's something to do with the garbage collection that they're going to automate. So it's some plan to automate, like, we don't actually know the specific details. We just know that, like, this plan basically involves undercutting what I assume would be the union of, like, the garbage collecting people to do this project through the guise of it being sustainable or renewable or something like that. But it's actually to revitalize the port and to bring domestic manufacturing back to this little region. And in doing so, undercutting the garbage collection union. That was how I understood it, but we don't actually know the detail. I don't think.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm guessing that he only gave her like the idea, and then she went and did the research to figure out more details, because I also was like, where did she get all this from? Because he only said like one sentence to her. So it was kind of confusing how we go from that club scene to this whole article that exposes all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't know where that stuff came from. I don't know what the tie-in is here.
I had the same assumption. I was like, she did the reporting thing while all of this other stuff was happening, basically. But yeah,
I guess they could have leaned a little bit more into that, and like if they had just had a couple lines of dialogue, and it's like, how did you find all this stuff out? Well, it's Ben Urich's blood. I mean, like, it runs strong in the family. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
And that would have emphasized that she didn't just intuit all this. She went out and researched and found stuff that a normal reporter probably couldn't have.
I kind of had the rule of cool with this one where I was like, I don't know, she's a really cool reporter. It didn't bother me. Like, I was like, yeah, that seems right. But I think you're probably right. They could have that. And to be honest, that's probably the type of line that gets cut for runtime is you go, it's not, it's fine. Like sort of thing that you edit out, for pacing and stuff like that. I just, seeing Fisk interact with children is fucking hysterical. And so Fisk basically starts chewing out his entire stuff, and then Blake fesses up, and he's like, look, it was me. And his boss is like, well, I'm responsible for you, so, whatever happens to you happens to me. And he starts giving what feels like the worst apology ever that actually evolves into a pretty good apology specifically for someone like Fisk. And I don't know how you guys felt about this, but I think Blake, in this moment, actually kind of wins him over. And I think Fisk realizes that in this moment with these two people, he is surrounded by people that, like, they're actually locals that care about this city, that if he does the right thing by them, will stick by his side. That was kind of how I read how this scene shakes out. He obviously does say to Daniel, if you do anything like this again, it'll be the last thing you do. But yeah, I thought this was a really affecting scene. I think Blake puts in an incredible performance here. And D'Onofrio responds brilliantly as well, as he sort of he keeps building up to more anger, and then Blake keeps talking, and like he manages to talk his way out of it. I thought it was great.
It was so odd. I don't know. It's just so random. And I wrote, "Is this the Trump tactic of just keep talking?" Because like that's what was in my mind. You just keep saying shit, and like Fisk wants to say something, but then he gets interrupted, and it's like,
he says
and then
something
eventually, and then it works.
Yeah,
and it works, and it's like, oh damn, like I guess then that's the way to go.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, he's a cool. I hate this kid so much. Drives me crazy. Yeah. I
know that I prefer things a lot more on the nose than most people, but going back to what I had said earlier about we don't really know what Fisk's heart is at this point. And so in this entire scene, I don't know if Fisk just needed a moment to calm down and he never would have actually done anything bad in retribution for this, or if the speech that the kid gave actually saved him in this moment. So if he had done something like behind his back and like pulled out a knife or pulled out brass knuckles or something, then that would have solidified, yes, he is still like the same brutal person and he is about to kill this kid, and then the kid's speech literally saves his life. But minus that, we're just trying to infer, did the speech save his life, or is Fisk actually just a good person that was going to let this go the whole time?
Right, but that's the work of the show.
I don't think he was going to kill him.
No, I don't think he's going to kill him. But the work of the show is like, who is this person now? Is he really changed? Like, I don't know that. I hate saying this because I be saying this shit all the time. I don't know that Fisk knows. Like, he doesn't know how he's going to react to this, and the kid keeps talking. And to Pat's point, I'm not sure how it like. We don't know, and I don't know that Fisk knows if it was the fact that this kid just kept talking and Fisk calmed down, or if the apology actually worked. Like I think that Fisk ends up in a place where he like is just completely disarmed by the fact that this kid just keeps talking.
Yeah, he's like just taken aback. He's like,
because no one does that to Fisk. The second that Fisk, like, and Fisk is looming over this kid in this moment. Like, D'Onofrio is towering over this kid, and this kid just looks him in the eye and keeps talking, and that doesn't happen ever. Yeah. So I don't know that I don't know that there's an answer, and I love that we don't know, and that it really makes you question the nature of the relationship between these two. We know how Blake feels about Fisk, but
I like how the progression of Fisk's apprentices each bring something new and like that challenges him. So you've got Dex, very troubled, psychopathic guy who Fisk can manipulate and fix, bring him under his wing. And then you have Echo, less broken, but like in need of like strength in a father figure and stuff like that, stuff that Fisk can provide. And then you have Daniel Blake, who has this weird ability to disarm Fisk in his, which is what he needs right now, to bring him back down from building rage and stuff like that.
Bro, this is why Wesley's death changes Fisk's life forever, because Wesley is the perfect like mentee / partner for Fisk. They are perfectly balanced for each other. And the rest of his life is just a search for the thing he had with Wesley, you know?
That's so true.
Yeah.
Wesley's the GOAT.
Yeah. R.I.P. to a real one.
All right,
Pull
so
one
all
out.
of the big corporate bosses out there, don't underestimate your PA. That's the message here.
Listen, having a good PA can change your life. And that's why we're excited to announce that Darth is immigrating to Australia to become Pat's PA.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting on
finally.
the green card.
The
That's,
ZeroIndent
the work
Patreon. We couldn't do it without you. Patreon.com/ZeroIndent. You guys made this happen. We couldn't be more thrilled. I'm excited to. That's my favorite thing about interacting with PAs is where someone will just. You could tell it's when executives do this, where they'll just handball an obviously easy task because they can't be fucked. Where they're like, you'll be in the middle of an email chain, they'll just CC some random person in from their company and be like, please organize a meeting for this week. And that person just like lines up calendars and books the meeting, and it's like, that would have taken you 5 seconds. Anyway, it's another capitalism gripe. We don't need to go there. The last big thing I think is Matt and Frank. Yeah, that's like the big crescendo of this episode. So Matt tracks the bullet casing back to the Punisher's lair, for want of a better word. The bullet has like on it a Punisher logo, and
I've been waiting to ask you guys this. I thought this entire time that he knew where Frank was, because there's no tracking going on. He just walks. He just knows where he's going and he goes there. Is that not the impression you got?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't explain how he knows where Frank is, so you would assume that he just like knows where he is because he's been keeping an eye on him, maybe.
Keeping tabs on him is my guess.
Yeah.
That was sort of. I assumed that, and now that you said that out loud, I don't know why I assumed that. I just did. Like, it was not a question in my mind. I don't know. Why would it? You could smell. I did also think that because the bullet case. I don't know. What? Did you have a thought there, Darth, or were you just asking because you had the same question?
Well, no, because you had been talking about like him tracking the bullet casing or something, and I'm like, the casing wasn't even made by Frank. It was one of his sycophants. So.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I have written the wrong thing. Well, no, the thing that when I said he was tracking down the bullet casing, and he recovers it. And actually, this is one of those like really cool like someone thought about this detective moments, and I love it when detective shows do this. This is largely not a detective show, but it can be, which is where they do something that would really actually work in real life. My favorite example is in that first episode of Elementary, Darth, where
I was just about to say it. It's
where
literally the marble rolling down.
He puts the marble on the floor and it rolls down. And Watson's like, "How did you do that?" She's like, so impressed. And it's the police because he's not with Watson yet. And he's like, well, if you have a panic room, they're really heavy and they tend to like warp some of the architecture around them. So there's always a slope toward panic rooms. And true in real life, true on TV, great stuff, good TV show. And yeah, Matt does the same thing where he notices that he knocks this bottle and it rolls down the hill and he sort of follows it and into this little drain where he finds the bullet casing, which has a little Punisher. It's a really cool little detail. It's a detail you don't have to do, but I love that this show is passionate about this stuff and these details. Then we get the big argument between them. But yeah, sorry.
I want to CinemaSins that.
What, in what way?
It didn't. Because he says like to Frank, it has your symbol on it, right? But it's painted on there. The thing the entire time has been that Matt cannot see all of the cops that have
he can feel
Frank's symbol on them.
It's a bullet. He can
feel
that.
the paint. Yeah. Okay. He could.
Yeah.
There is a shot where you can see him like
Yeah.
running his fingers over the casing. Yeah.
Yeah. So take your ding back, okay? Your lack of attention does not constitute a mistake. Now that should be the new tagline of the ZeroIndent review. It's not close studies of genre fiction anymore, guys. We've changed it. Yeah, we get a big argument. There's a lot to unpack here. Pat, can you summarize the shape of this argument for us? Or this exchange? I don't know if we would call it an argument. it evolves into one, certainly.
All right, so Matt is confronting Frank about the Punisher logo being on the casing, and then, you know, they both understand that, like, these people are acting independently of Frank, but it's Frank's actions that is causing this ideological movement that gets innocent people like Hector Ayala killed, and it creates, you know, just general violence and suffering and stuff like that. And Matt tries to compel Frank to do something else, something, you know, productive for society in a lawful manner. And Frank retorts, you know, like, that shit doesn't work, and you know it doesn't work, and you're lying to yourself and to me. And the reason you've come here, you know, with, like, you know, this pent up, like, resentment and anger, this is about your dead friend Foggy, and how, you know, the forces that I'm trying to stop, you know, with a bullet and you know, stop in a definite final sense, are the same forces that killed your friend, and, you know, your anger is misdirected. It's not at me. It's at yourself, and it's at these people who, you know, are roaming the street doing bad things. Is that about the shape of it, you reckon?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's a really good summary.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it devolves. Yeah, Matt has this sanctimonious energy that he comes at it with, like a smugness might be the word that is the closest to what this is. I don't know how else to describe his posture going into it. And yeah, Frank just dismantles him. And this is, I want to say it before we get the YouTube comment. This does confirm what Darth said in the fucking first episode, where you brought up the Punisher and you were like, did Frank know that Matt was Daredevil the whole time? This does confirm that, because Frank calls him Red. So I'll say that here, that he has figured it out at some point. So Darth, would you like to give a speech as we give you this award for the most smug motherfucker on the podcast?
I would just like to say that your lack of attention to detail does not constitute.
Oh, devastating.
Oh, fatality. Whew. Oh my word! I need to go lie down. Oh, damn.
No, what? So the interesting thing, I've been waiting to ask you guys about this, and I meant to look it up prior, because when this whole thing happened, I was like, that was it? Like, this is the revelation that he knows who, like, Frank knows who he is, and Matt doesn't react to it. And I was like, this isn't right. And then I went and looked, and the last time apparently that they were together was in the Punisher season 2. So, so apparently, like, there has been a meeting before this, and assumedly they've had this conversation. Oh, I figured out who you are. You're Daredevil. And so they've had this conversation before, and that's why it's not brought up now.
Yes.
You've seen that season of television, David, is it?
I don't remember that. Karen's all over that show, but I don't remember Matt being in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, interesting. I don't remember that at all.
That was just me quickly. It could be wrong. I was just me quickly asking AI, because I was like, when did this happen? Because this discussion had to have happened at some point, because it should be right now.
Well,
if it hasn't happened somewhere else.
AI would never be wrong.
No.
The AI is like, hold on, let me go watch 2 seasons of The Punisher. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Okay. 2 things I want to call out, and then we can talk about the nature of this argument, and who we think, how we think this plays out. Because I think we can all agree, like, Frank is right. I think we all agree Frank has a point here, that, like, this is about Foggy, and Matt is living in denial a little bit about why he's feeling all of these types of things.
Isn't, like, every series
yes.
of Daredevil about Matt being wrong?
Yeah, basically.
And, like, living in denial?
Yeah, it's called good TV. He's also a Catholic, so it's kind of his shtick. Yeah, Frank calls the cops bullshit fanboys, which is fucking awesome. This show, it speaks to my heart in its complete lack of respect for policing. Then Frank comes in, and yeah, because to your point and the way you described it, Pat, I think is a really good way of the shape of this conversation, which is Matt kind of challenges him and says, like, you could be of service. And then Frank comes back and he says, Are you of service, Red? Did you serve? You pranced around this, and again, the word serve there has double meaning for Frank, right? He's talking about serving in the context that matters, but also serving in the context of military, because Frank was obviously in Afghanistan. I said that weird, Afghanistan. And he says, you pranced... Some more guys, listen, I was saying to Darth yesterday, Pat, I'm so sleep deprived at the moment that, like, the neurons are going wrong. You prance around the city in a Halloween costume, beating the snot out of bad guys. Hey, thank you for your service. And then Matt goes, I mean, you could help people. You could save lives. Frank says, I did that. I was downrange, Red. Look at what it got me. And then Matt goes, oh, I apologize. I didn't realize you were the victim in all this. And like the look on Frank's face. He says, I didn't use that pussy-ass word my entire life. You don't put it in my mouth. You understand that? Bro, the fact that these guys know exactly where each other's buttons are, I love this relationship. The fact that Matt can just, like, as Frank, because this is why Frank brings up Foggy, because he's like, well, fuck you. If we're just gonna say the thing, then, like, fuck you, dude. Like, oh, you think you know my fucking secret heart and what's in me? And then, Frank, he says, I think you want my permission.
You want to get your hands on somebody, huh? You want to hurt them? Maybe a little bit scared. A little scared about what that means. Full of shit, counselor. So full of shit. You're guilty.
Excuse me?
Yeah. That guilt, that shame, that's my home, Red. And I can see it on you. I can smell it on you. It's all over you.
I'm gonna come back another day, Frank. Maybe catch you at a better time.
You come at me with that horse shit about saving lives. How about that friend of yours? You save his life.
It's all about him. He talks to you, doesn't he? You hear his voice.
Every time I start moving, I still hear my little boy. I see him. And I hear his voice. He says, get him, Daddy. Every last single one of them, get him. That's why I do what I do. That's why he's eating at you. That's why he's eating at you, because you know you didn't do a goddamn thing, and it's gonna keep eating at you. It's gonna keep eating and eating and eating. There's no getting away with it, you understand?
And Matt kind of, like, he throws the system back at Frank. He says, he got life. Frank says, how about old Foggy? He get life? Foggy. Matt, he was the kindest, purest soul I ever met. And guys like you and me, we can work a lifetime and never measure up to his decency. Goodbye, Frank. Whew. Just... you just gotta sit in it. It's such a bad day for Matt Murdock. And
I will say, I feel like it could, like, I think, like, the tones are there, but, like, I feel like it's like a first or second draft kind of script. Like, I feel like it could have been said a bit more poetically, but I don't know. I feel like that way about a fair few of these, like, the fair few of the lines in these episodes.
Can I say something weird? I think the scene is too quick. Like, there's something about the cadence between them that isn't quite right. Some of the stuff they say is right, but, like, I felt that as well. Like, it's heavy and, like, it's big thematic stuff that you can deal with, but, like, there's something about it that doesn't. It's slightly off.
Yeah, it feels kind of like quick and stitched together or something. I don't know. Yeah.
I think a lot of their other interactions are just really slowly paced. Like, they're just, like, sitting on the rooftop, like, waiting for 15 minutes for someone to show up. It's just really slow. So this is kind of like the opposite.
Yeah, Frank does lots of big pauses in his dialogue. Because, a lot of the time with the other scenes, he's in the middle of doing something. So, when they're having that entire episode where Matt's on the roof, he's doing all this prep to take out this gang across the street, sort of thing. Maybe that is because he's not doing anything. It's just sitting there.
Yeah. He just like when Matt comes in, Frank like he runs at him and he starts screaming. It's like, what the hell? And then the whole scene, he's just like in his chair, he's sipping on his coffee or whatever. Yeah, I feel like there isn't as much purpose in this scene as compared to other Daredevil Punisher scenes. Yeah.
But that kind of almost works for me in an interesting way, where Matt might also kind of be right about Frank at this point. Like, maybe Frank has just deteriorated. Like, he doesn't seem like he's in a good place at all. Like, he's just kind of this feral animal. Maybe that's why it doesn't feel like an authentic conversation yet.
Yeah. I feel like I don't know, it's quite messy, like this idea that what Frank is proposing, like the problem isn't me, it's like people unwilling to, handle the problems, to put on a costume and, take care of the bad guys, but like, and he's like, why don't you do that, Red? And, the thing that Matt has been doing is not putting on the Daredevil suit, putting on a suit and tie and helping people, as in the normal way you help people in society. And the reason why Hector got killed is the same reason why Foggy got killed, is because people are inspired by people like the Punisher, and just random casualties happen along the way. So I just don't see how you're expected to find Frank's argument compelling to Matt Murdock. Like, it's kind of like everything he's saying is like, kind of, I feel like Matt would be like, is aware of that, and like he's actively choosing to not, engage in that side of
right, but he wants to
behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what sort of makes it messy, is that Matt, as Frank says, like you want permission to like hurt someone. I don't know. It's like, I feel like there's a lot of like conflicting things going on here.
I think you're kind of dancing around one of the issues that I had with the entire purpose of the scene. And if the entire thing was Matt going there to try to get permission to put the suit back on, and the entire thing is Foggy, and Foggy was the reason that he's not putting the suit on, and we're supposed to be feeling that he has all of this trauma, and there's only been a few small instances of us even seeing anything remotely that we could think this is trauma from Foggy dying, this is why Matt's not putting on the suit. Like, I would like to see more of that, like the fear that Karen had when she thought Fisk was going to come after her. Like, she was looking nervous. She was carrying a gun in her purse. She was having dreams and seeing Fisk. Like, Matt wasn't having any of that. He wasn't seeing, visions of Foggy. And like when he like thinks about putting on the Daredevil suit and he sees a vision of Foggy, and then he puts away the Daredevil suit, and we're like, oh, that's the reason he can't put it on. He's thinking of Foggy. Like, if they had done stuff like that, then this whole conversation makes way more sense.
Mm-hmm. I'm imagining them getting Eldon Hansen back for one scene. We need you to stand. You need you to be a ghost. Please stand next to this cupboard. Thank you. You're done for the day.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's probably a big production thing, right? There's that divide between the footage from the previous version and the retooling, and that first episode that we know is completely reshot after the fact. So, I see where that could work. I think I much prefer what we have, which is this very slow build up that is less obvious. But I think I would change this conversation in some way. I don't know how, but I would try and make this work. It does do a thing though, which is something that we haven't seen before off the back of this, which is Matt has this pretty unpleasant is a mild way to put it. He has this exchange with Frank, and he goes home, and Heather is there, and she's loving and kind, and it's like just this show. I said this before, I'll say it again. It is really hard to portray loving, functional relationships on TV, because it usually makes for bad TV. The way that this show is able to portray the kindness between these two people, and this relationship is really impressive to me, and it's the acting, and it's the directing, and it's the writing. Yeah, I just thought that was like absolutely beautiful, that you have this really rough exchange, and then it's like he comes home and there's someone here that is willing to support him and doesn't need to like ply him for details and chastise him for. It's just like a nice relationship, which is how you know it's doomed, because it's Daredevil. But at least for now, I am trying to trick myself into thinking maybe they'll end up together and it'll be fine. Yeah, I thought it was really, really beautiful. And also, continuity alert, Matt is still wearing his mum's cross.
Yeah, I noticed that at some point.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's...
Another interesting tidbit when they're having their comforting moment there, and he's like, well, how did your day go? And she inconspicuously describes some of her clients, and she's talking about the Fisks.
Oh, I didn't put that together.
Like,
That's
but
awesome.
he was like hugging her when she's talking about this couple, and I'm like, is he gonna smell the cologne? Is he gonna smell the Fisk cologne? Is this where it happens? Was I right?
Oh my god! If they do that, I am quitting the company. If he smells Fisk's cologne, are you kidding me? I'm done. That's very funny, Darth. Yeah, this episode kind of ends with two things, right? We already talked about the Adam reveal. I don't want to repeat it here, but Adam's in a prison, Rabbit and a snowstorm's on the wall. This is originally where I had my sort of thought about the shamanistic Matt relationship. It was when he was on the roof. There is one conversation with Fisk and Vanessa I want to touch on before we kind of wrap up with the tag of this episode, which is... unless you guys have anything else on Matt and Heather. I don't think there's much else to say there, but I just thought it was cute and nice.
Yes.
Yeah. And more of that, please. Especially in a show this brooding and dark. It's kind of a relief. Yeah, Fisk and Vanessa finally have the conversation about their marriage. And it doesn't come to a conclusion, but it's the first step in an answer to the question that Heather poses to them about whether this is about repairing this relationship or dissolving it. And Fisk, he sort of explains really softly. He says, when I was a boy, I learned by watching my father how to shake a man's hand, how to know when someone intends to cheat you. I learned the power of persuasion, how to move men's minds or break their bodies. But forgiveness, that wasn't part of who he was. No, I am trying. I would like for things to be the way they were. I understand that may not be possible. And it's like, to your question earlier, Darth, is this a guy who's changed? And then the next scene, he goes into the basement where he's got a boyfriend in a cage. And it's like, God, this show refuses to be uncomplicated. God, it's good. It's great.
Just imagine if they had ended that episode with Fisk saying, "This is for your own good," because he's a werewolf and he's protecting.
Yeah, this is for your own good. No, he goes, pipe down and you'll get a treat if you're a good boy. It's very funny. But yeah, we get the little coda with the man in the mask with that sick mask where he's walking into a subway and he appears to be stealing this man's blood? ? And this is where I suspect that we're going to get our physical threat for this season in this character. And that was where I wrote down, is this the kid who went to Heather for help at the book signing? I'm not sure the physicality tracks, because this kind of looks like a big stocky guy, but he's also in a bunch of clothing, so I just don't know. Like, he's in some big coveralls, this guy.
And it's not that big a threat because we just make more blood, so...
That's so true. What's a little blood between friends? Maybe he works for the Red Cross. I don't know. Like...
They're out of A negative, so they send this guy out.
Yeah. He's a radicalized Red Cross member.
You know, the thought that I did have that was like, ugh, that I immediately like expelled from my brain was like, the whole subplot of season 2 of Daredevil is the hand stealing and siphoning blood so they can build the thing that will resurrect Elektra as the Black Sky. There was a half a second where I was like, oh no, does this guy work for the hand? And I was like, no, bad thought. I swatted it from my brain. I said, no, not today. Because that would suck if it was like
I feel like
the world
this
small.
I feel like this show is going to try and distance itself from any mysticism.
Yeah, because magic exists in this world, right? Doctor Strange, etc.
Yeah, well, yes.
I was about to say
Yes.
they're going the
mean-
opposite direction. They're bringing in Miss Marvel, so they're like literally going towards magic.
Well, no, they said that she's a mutant in this universe, brother.
Eh.
Yeah, I know. I know. All right, anything else in episode 4? Or should we take a quick break and then come back for episode 5?
Yeah, I'm good.
The most memorable thing I don't think was directly mentioned, but when Fisk is in the classroom and the kids sing the first song, and he stands up and he's clapping and he's like, "Oh, that was so good. That was awesome. That was amazing." And she's like, "Okay, let's do the second song." And he's like, "There's no need for that. There is no need for that."
He's so awkward.
Such talent. Such talent.
This makes me want to put Fisk in regular everyday scenarios so badly. Show me him
Right?
trying to return something at the grocery store. Like, just, exchanges like that. Me and Pat talked about this in season 3 quite a lot with Ray Nadeem and the vector that Ray Nadeem provided for that season of TV, which is you can now have a guy who does everyday normal stuff as a character, and that gives you more options to explore of like how different things can happen and what different scenes you can write into your show. That cursed birthday party at his very opening introduction in his family life, where his wife is like, she needs to go pick up the cake, but he's got, she tried the other 2 credit cards and they were both overmaxed. Like, just this like really, and then his kid is like, the kid doesn't even want to be at his own party because he knows that his family are broke boys. Like, it sucks. But I would love to see Fisk in some more awkward everyday scenarios that being a mayor is going to force him into. Because I think it's just a really cool, and it makes for good humor. And the show is funny, which is not strictly something I was expecting. Because Disney is not good at that. But this show is actually funny.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. All right, well, good call out, Darth. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back to talk about episode 5 momentarily. Welcome back. We are talking about episode 5, With Interest, directed by Jeffrey Nachmanoff, written by Grain Godfrey. This was an interesting one because nothing happens, so it's a very short summary. Patrick, could I please hear the world's shortest summary?
Matt Murdock heads to New York Mutual with designs of increasing the firm's line of credit. The bank gets robbed. Matt stops the bank robbery. It's objectively awesome television, which is, for once, a judgment the summary is equipped to make. Whether a good episode of Daredevil remains to be seen. At any rate, all's well that ends well for now.
Yeah. I don't have a lot on this episode except that I had a freaking great time. The first thing I did notice is this episode opens with the credits, and it's the first time that's happened. We usually get some kind of prologue or some kind of setup, and then the credits. And I have to be honest. Okay, this is a question I have for both of you, and I think I know the answer. You guys watch the credits every time, right? Like the intro credits? Or are you hitting that skip button?
When I'm when I'm watching it the first time just for enjoyment, yes. But when I'm watching it for these, I skip it.
That makes sense. Yeah, okay. Darth?
It depends on my mood. If I love the credits, so typically I do watch them. But if I'm like, I got to get through this viewing so I can go to bed, then I skip it.
Okay. The reason I ask is this is the first time for me in a big way, outside of the first episode, that the intro sets the tone really strongly for how this episode opens. My note here just says, NB, reminder to future David. Tell the audience to always watch the intro. So this is me telling you to always watch the intro. It's St. Patrick's Day. Bro, you can feel Scarter Payne running the heck out of this show, being like, what's a compelling setup? Bank robbery? Nah, whatever. Bank robbery on St. Patrick's Day. Okay. Bank robbery on St. Patrick's Day by Irish mobsters. Now we're fucking cooking. It's yeah. I love Scarter Payne as a showrunner. I'm definitely gonna go back and rewatch Punisher. This also means the story's moved from Fisk's election is on New Year's Eve, so it's now March. So we've been about 3 months of time in the show so far, which sort of feels about right. We meet Yusuf Khan, the bank manager, who has a
assistant bank manager.
I'm sorry, the assistant bank manager.
Yeah.
And they have this bizarrely civil, charming exchange. This actor's really charming. Okay. And then we have to. Okay. Did you guys recognize this fool?
Yes.
I did, but I couldn't remember why. Until the Kamala connection like really got established.
So
I also don't know if was he this charming in that show? I feel like this was like a kind of a different character. Maybe he acts differently at work. I don't know.
Yeah, Pat, who is this guy?
He's Kamala's dad, and yes, I think from what I remember, it's pretty consistent with his characterization. Him and the mum were like really like great comic characters because they were just regular people, you know, like the most like just doofy like normal parents, contrasted against like superheroes. But they were in the Miss Marvel show, and then they were in the Marvels movie, which I forced myself to watch like quite recently, which is why I remembered him. But yeah, I think he's probably like the best part of that show / movie.
Okay, but who is? You still haven't said it.
What?
Who's what? Who is what the character? Who is she?
Oh, Miss Marvel.
Yes. Can you explain Miss Marvel?
Okay, right. Okay, Miss Marvel is one of the newer superheroes in Phase 4 or 5 of MCU, wherever we are now. She... you said she's a mutant, is that right? I don't remember.
In the comics, but then they've changed the powers, and it's a whole... Whatever. That's not important.
Yeah, I don't think they've touched mutants yet in the MCU. They did in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., by the way.
No, I think that actually is in her Disney Plus series. That's like she interacted with the bracelet, but because she's a mutant, it did something different than it would have for other people.
Yes, that's right. And also, there's mutants in WandaVision, isn't there?
Is there?
I think, isn't there?
Man,
isn't old mate
not
from
been paying attention?
Isn't old mate from Fox Universe there?
Yeah, but the thing about that in WandaVision is that like it's a meta nod to the fact that he played Quicksilver, but like in the context of that show, it's like he's a random person in that universe, and he's just pulled the soul of Quicksilver into this random person, she's made it so that this random person thinks he's Quicksilver, who is Wanda's brother, or something to that degree. But I think like the fact that he played Quicksilver in the Fox universe is like not at all relevant in the context of the show.
It's
I
incidental,
think.
Right?
Yeah.
But then is it Wanda a mutant? I don't know. It doesn't matter. They'll figure it out.
No, because she got her powers from the Mind Stone, which is
that true?
I suppose. Yeah. In the beginning of Age of Ultron, they're being experimented on by this I don't know, Russian faction. And that was like back when they didn't have any prospects of ever integrating the X-Men into the universe, so that's how they like got around explaining that.
And you have like a Wikipedia in your brain for this universe in a way I do not.
Yeah, as I'm saying this, I'm like, man, I'm really showing how much of a MCU nerd I am.
I used to. We did back on DCM Works. We did do, and it's still up on the patreon.com/ZeroIndent. There's 10 years worth of archived Patreon content there. We did in the lead up to Infinity War, we basically shotgunned the entire MCU and then talked about it week to week. I think we watched like 3 films a week, which is too much. And it's a really interesting discussion. But at a certain point in history, I definitely had that level of knowledge, and I now absolutely do not.
I was pointing out the Multiverse of Madness did have Professor X and
Yeah, old mate from The Office is Mr. Fantastic. Isn't he?
Yeah, John Krasinski.
Krasinski. I couldn't get his name. That's not my issue with this scene. First of all, Yusuf's charming. It's great. It's cute. And so I'll set up the scene, and then I have to talk about something that almost drove me off a cliff watching this episode. They have this exchange. He's trying to get the credit line extended. And then just as Matt is leaving, the bank is being robbed by the Irish mob. And Matt actually goes back in to go and help deal with the situation, and is taken as a hostage. We'll talk about that and then some of the action, because I'm curious to hear Darth's thoughts on the action, because you're kind of an action guy, Darth. But Yusuf is explaining Miss Marvel, and Matt's like, I don't know who that is. And he holds up a Funko Pop, and he names it as a Funko Pop. Now, in fiction, one of the challenges with alternate history is deciding what to include and what not to include. Now, you guys probably don't know much about Funko because you don't hate it as much as I do. I hate it with a violent passion. The heat of 1,000 suns. Do I hate Funko Pops? I firmly believe that in the post-apocalypse, the one thing that will survive will be the Funko Pops, and I'll be buying like a loaf of bread with a Wolverine Funko in 20 years from now.
Yeah, I was about to say there'll be the currency.
Yeah. Because there's just got to be like fucking landfills worth of Funko Pops out there of like characters no one gives a shit about. But anyway, he holds up the Funko Pop, which means that the Funko company exists in Marvel. What are we doing? Like, why would you name it as a Funko Pop? Because, again, you guys don't know, you don't need to know this, but I'm just letting you know. So basically in 1998, Mika Becker, basically he was fucking weirdo in America, and he was upset that he couldn't afford a piggy bank of Big Boy. And Big Boy is a burger mascot in America for a franchise, semi-famous. Americans will know what I'm talking about. And he licensed the right to make his own, which is how he started the company. But that also means that if Funkos exist, the same year the Avengers event happened, Fundamental Capital acquired the company from Acon Investments. What are we doing the same year as the Avengers event? They're selling Funko to fucking Fundamental Capital?
Mate, business doesn't stop just because there's an alien invasion. You gotta get that bag.
Their office is down the block from Stark Tower. It doesn't make any fucking sense. Oh, I hate when
it makes a
fucking
lot
TV
of sense,
shows do
actually.
this.
Yeah. You're right there. You can have in-person meetings.
Mr.
Mr. Stark, we'd love to make toys of your suits.
He's taking that board meeting. He's doing the Bruce Wayne thing of sleeping, Oh, it drives me up a fucking wall when TV shows do stuff like this. And I understand why they did it. It's to sell a toy. I get it. But naming it a Funko Pop, anyway, that shit drives me crazy, because someone in the production team should have been like, is this a good idea? I understand that was probably a Disney thing. It just, sorry, it ran over. It's just, whew. But also somehow Darth gets another fucking point for smuggest guy on the podcast because here's the merch you were talking about in episode 1 back again. So, fuck me, I guess. Just a terrible day for
merch?
David. We can't have the same conversation on the podcast twice. In episode 1, Darth goes, he mentions, there's merch about, because he's making the argument where Fisk is saying, Darth goes, well, why is he being critical of these vigilantes and not other vigilantes? And then Darth goes, why is it okay for, now I'm just explaining the podcast that happened. But Darth goes, well, it's, why are you saying the Punisher and Daredevil and White Tiger are bad, but then it's okay to buy merch of these other characters? And then Patrick Laverne goes, what merch? And then Darth goes, like kids dressed as the Hulk or whatever. And then Pat goes, oh yeah, you just mean the fact that in the universe there is merch of these characters. And this is that merch showing up again in the show. And it's just infuriating how validating this TV show is being about Darth's view of the world. It's driving me crazy. Anyway,
You just paid attention to the little details.
You can't tell I have to listen to these conversations twice when I do the edit, can you?
Who knows? Maybe the fact that they snuck in a Funko Pop, it funded this episode.
That's a much. Let's pretend to think about it that way. That makes me.
Let's go with
mad.
that.
Now, two things. One, I am just loving the fact that this is the kind of like tiny little thing that I would be normally going on a rant about. But now I don't give a flip, and you're like, this is the worst thing ever.
To be fair,
number two,
specifically because Funko Pops are like a bugbear of mine. Like this triggered something primal in me.
Don't you have a few Funko Pops on your shelf?
Not anymore, cunt. I do. I still own two.
Really?
I have a kid.
Say.
I have a
Grogu, yeah.
I almost said Goku. I have a Grogu. And then I have like a limited edition Flareon that's worth some money that I've just been holding on to. That someone randomly mailed to the DCM Works PO box back in the day. But I've never purchased a Funko Pop myself. They've always been gifted them.
Because I was staring at that Flareon last time I was over.
Yeah. With covetous affection.
And I've got Zero, just FYI. So it's you say you hate him. Seeing that backed up by evidence.
What was the second thing you're going to say, Darth?
Second thing is reimagining the scene slightly because your entire point is just like, why did they name it Funko? It could have been named any other brand. But if he had just held up the thing and his, like, the dad's entire thing was like, this is a toy made of my daughter. And if he had just held it up and gone, toy, like, that would have been pretty silly. And on the flip side, like, when I look at that, I'm not seeing a name brand. I am just seeing like, that's a Funko. And like him saying, look, she's a Funko. Like that didn't hit me like they were dropping a well-known name brand. It was just like, that is the style of toy that he was naming. That's how I saw it. Because I don't that closely associate the brand, if that makes any sense.
That's probably what infuriates David, right? Is that Funko is so big that it's beyond a brand.
it's ubiquitous with a medium of product. It's just another it's another classic example of the way that capitalism dominates subjectivity, right? Like the fact that this company is so big that it's able to reach across brands, right? Disney have Funko, DC have Funko, Warner Brothers have Funko. Fucking The Last of Us has Funko for some fucking reason. Like,
bro, like bands have Funkos.
Bands have
Funkos.
So
everything.
We're 3 steps away from ZeroIndent having fucking Funkos. Like that's the part that frustrates me. It is a complete dissemination of a medium into a single brand in the same way that Kleenex is.
I guess this just has me curious of like what would not the same idea, what would not trigger the same response in you? So like if he had held up a different toy that looks like, you know, like the classic like Batman toys like that I have on my shelf back there, and he holds up one of those and he's like, look, Hasbro,
I'd be fine with that.
would you be okay with that?
Yeah, I'd be fine with that because
But it's the same thing.
it's not, because Funko. Okay, the thing about Funkos is they don't. I don't want to do this. I'm just gonna get mad again. The thing specifically, deep breath. The thing specifically with Funkos that I find infuriating is they're solid plastic. There's 10 fucking billion of them, and those things, like, it is so much plastic to be manufactured that shouldn't exist. That has no art to it whatsoever. There's maybe 3 Funkos I've ever seen where I went, okay, that's almost, there's almost art to that. There's a little diorama type thing, similar to what Pat had before. There's some Funkos like that where I'm like, okay, that's something. It's just no artistry, no creativity. It drives me fucking crazy. And it's so much plastic and it's such a waste. Anyway. At the risk of increasing my blood pressure further, I would like to move on. If that's okay with you, Darth. I've lost the fully formed argument of why I hate them, and now I'm just seeing red.
I'm trying to figure out how to properly shame you for letting your personal feelings so color your reading of the material.
That's what I do. That's my whole thing. That's my whole thing. It's my entire personality. Anyway. Yeah, they have this exchange, and then the bank robbers come in, and they're really fun. I talked before about Scarter Payne writing really fun Irish characters, and we can see that in full effect here. I guess I'll try and summarize the bank robbery, because there's really 3 beats that happen. The first is the bank robbers break in and take everybody hostage. The second is that Matt talks his way into not being released. And then the third is Matt kind of infiltrating the bank robbery, knocking the guys out, swiping the jewel, and then sort of trying to get to a resolution as the police come in. And he manages to navigate this whole affair without anybody being hurt. But just the dialogue here is really fun. You know, the the lead mobster guy, as Matt explained, you know, he's kind of drilling him about his history, and he goes, "Oh, you're a," you know, he's like, "I was an orphan," you know, and he's like, "Oh, you're a wee, you're a regular wee Charles Dickens character, aren't you?" And this is where I've written, I would pay very silly money to watch a Scarter Payne run show that's entirely about Irish gangsters. And there's some really great action choreography throughout. Darth, talk to me about this episode, because I feel like this is the type of thing that you're much better at understanding than we are. But like, yeah, does the action in this work for you? How do you feel about the sort of the choreography and the blocking and how this sort of these action sequences play out?
My overall take on the fighting was extremely negative, because the last thing that we saw was Matt on the roof training, and at least from what we saw then, he had not lost any of his prowess. Yet these are just normal dudes that he has constantly, some of them he knocks out right away, but others he has trouble subduing, and it's not consistent. He keeps going through these waves regarding his training and his ability, and they're just adjusting his fighting power, like his level. They're adjusting it down to whatever they need it to be for the villain that they have in that episode. And I really hate that inconsistency. Like, you know, if he was trained at the Elektra level, then every normal human without said training should be gone in 2 punches, you know? Yet he could barely take the one guard on the stairwell. He barely manages to get that done without alerting the rest of them at the end of the episode when he chases the one guy that's dressed as a cop out. That's like a legit long fight that he would have had with a trained assassin or something in other shows. And like the only explanation is that he is so out of practice, yet the ending of the last episode was he is still in practice. So from that perspective, I did not like the way that everything flowed together. But I adored the whole thing. I was like into it. I loved that this was like, he is there to be the hero. He is still doing the superhero stuff, but he's doing it secretly while dressed as a civilian. And then the dialogue that he had with what's his face while they're trying to find the jewels and doing all of this stuff. So the way that they were able to tie that conversation and the dialogue with the policewoman that was on the phone with the mobsters, and the way they tied all of that dialogue together with the action to keep everything moving, but also keep it interesting in a way that didn't mandate the action carry everything. Yeah, I loved it despite my issues with the choreography.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. I agree, but my mind went the other way, where I'm like, instead of scaling Daredevil down, they've like leveled up everyone else. I was thinking like, damn, like fucking every motherfucker knows how to fight apparently. Like,
yeah, that's so funny. I knew Darth was gonna pick up on something like that I just am incapable of. I had also had the thought that he was out of practice, that these guys are professional mobsters, but also like, I think this is also the show angling to be like, maybe the armor is something he got really used to, you know, at the tail end of his career as Daredevil, like really relying on the equipment and the armor in a way that he just isn't able to anymore because he's not wearing it. Like, I think that might also be part of the angle of that urge to have him put back on the suit, is maybe an outcome of those decisions for me, whether or not what Darth says, you know, doesn't really click in my brain. But that makes sense to me as well, Pat.
the suit gives him his mojo.
Yeah, right? Like, because that is, like...
gives him his confidence.
You know, like, that's got to be part of it, right? Like, you know, at the end of that that second episode where he's just yelling, he's like, rah! Like, that's Daredevil. Sneaking around this fucking bank vault, that's not Daredevil. That's, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I did have one point that is a very anti-Darthism. When I was looking back at the entire point of him being there, and I don't understand the money bit.
Okay.
Because he's going there like for a loan or to extend a loan or something, and like I thought the entire purpose of this new version of Murdock and whoever they are, like this attorney is now successful. Like, they now are in a nice building. They have paying clients. They are making money. And then that was the previous like 4 episodes, right? And now all of a sudden they're like, we need to go talk to a banker because we need to borrow more money.
Okay, rolls up sleeves. Let me explain something about how startups work. So, they are spending... The goal with a startup like this under late-stage capitalism is to spend as much money as you have. Like, you basically need to spend as much money as you possibly can to grow as quickly as you can to then stabilize at a scale that's then sustainable. So what they're effectively doing from a financial perspective is building the train tracks as the train is running. So what you want to do is you want to over-leverage yourself to get the slightly larger clients, to get the cash flow in, to pay off the investments from the bank, to then get a larger investment from the bank, to then grow even more. Like, it's a cycle that you get into where you kind of go through rounds of trying to extend that line of credit or that funding. And because they're defense attorneys, that funding comes from banks, not from venture capital firms. And so it's kind of a pretty common practice to go, okay, we need an influx of cash so we can staff up our paralegals, we can staff up our team so we can take on bigger cases, so we can make more money, so we can have a stable team, so that we can take on even more cases. You know, that's sort of how the growth works, is through that kind of loan process. So does that answer your question?
Well, part of the other question, I guess, was just like if anyone else was confused by that I mean, in the moment, like this was one of those things that Rybold in one of our recent recordings, he called it like a refrigerator moment. You know, like it didn't hit me in the moment. I was just like, oh, he needs a money bank loan, whatever. But then later, I'm like, why did they're successful? Why did they need money?
It has come up before though. It comes up when Matt is at the office with McDuffie just after he's taken Hector's case, and she's like, we can't afford this. So it has come up before. It's not like a new detail.
And also their office isn't that glamorous. Like it's kind of like dank a little bit. I feel like it sort of does for me. It like evokes like exactly what you're describing, a startup. Like they have a lot of like a lot of starting loan money to get things going, but like they don't, it's not like they're in any successful position.
Yeah, I think when I did the math in that first episode, they have about 8 desks. So if you imagine 8 desks, hot desking, Jesus, plus Matt, plus McDuffie, plus the investigator, that's like 11 salaries plus lease. Like that's a lot of money that you have to get out in front of to build up a client base. And Matt continually taking on these pro bono cases, which does seem to be a condition of their funding for one of the loans, because that's sort of why he gets sent to take Leroy's case in the previous episode.
Yeah.
That's interesting though. That was a refrigerator moment for you. Maybe you're just less cursed by knowledge, Darth. Maybe you haven't had to sit in those board meetings. Maybe that's why. Because my brain
that's why I said it was
like clicked it into place as like a real thing that I understand that I've been on the inside of for quite some time.
And that's why I said like it was such an odd thing for me to be thinking about, because like I normally am looking at the action or the weapons or something, but I'm like,
especially
but the loans though.
That does make sense to me though, because your day job is a lot about money, so there is something there of like your brain being like, I need an answer to this question.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah. Could just be finance pilled, There's some really good stuff. Matt opens the bank vault. There's some really cool stuff in here. And Yusuf is like, this thing is like £1,000. You're not going to be able to just like, unlock it like it's a locker or whatever. And then Matt just like does it in front of him. It's the most superhero shit and it fucking rules.
And I love Matt doing the Irish accent.
Oh, it's so good. And that's because his dad had a slight Irish patois to his accent as well.
There you go.
So there you go, battling Jack. And I love that when he says Matt Murdock and the guy's like, oh, you're fucking Irish, He's like, where are you from? He says Hell's Kitchen, and then he goes, oh no, where are you really from? He goes, before the big what does he say, before the boat? Yeah, the big swim. And he goes, I don't know, I'm an orphan. And he's like, you're a wee fucking Charles Dickens character. It's really fun. But my favorite line of this episode presented a question for me, which was my bit at the start, where he goes, you recognize the accent, but you don't seem to know jack shite about the significance of St. Paddy's Day for a Protestant, do you? And then the detective says, I must have missed that chapter, Mr. James. Care to catch me up? And he says, just another Wednesday, love. And my note says, hey, Patrick, what does this mean? Is this because Protestants don't believe in saints because saints are Catholic? And St. Patrick's Day is based on the fact that he's a saint? This is your territory far more than mine. I'm pretty sure that's right.
Well, yeah, I got no clue. I was relying on you. I was
Damn
hoping
it.
you would know.
Fuck. We both did the same thing. The theologians in the chat, go off. Let us know. Yeah, very fun. The shotgun stuff is a very cool little sequence where he's disarming this guy on the stairs, and he like knocks the guy out just as he catches the shotgun, so it doesn't fall. This plan is really cool as well. So the bank robbery is being run by these Irish dudes, and their boss is actually one of the hostages. And the way that this resolves itself, if Matt doesn't intervene, is they steal this diamond. The lead robber, I was like, criminal, the lead robber, disguises himself as a cop as the police come in, and he hands the diamond off to his boss, who's one of the hostages. And then they both walk away freely in either direction. But of course, Matt Murdock is there, so he tracks them both down, and he beats the crap out of the lead bank robber, and gets the jewel back. Oh no, he doesn't get the jewel back. He swapped the jewel at the last second for one of Yusuf's candies. And so the woman opens the little jewelry bag to discover that it's just a little candy. And then he goes back to the bank, and he catches up with Yusuf just to say hi. And it's actually a really lovely scene. Like, a very warm relationship between them. And Yusuf's like, oh, you should come over for dinner and, like, meet the family. And my note reads, Avengers alert. And then, in the bowl, Matt has, palmed the diamond into the bowl to return it to the bank. So that's kind of how this all resolves. And yeah, Matt walks out with a new friend and an Avengers hook in. So, bit of fun.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine a conversation between Matt and Kamala. I mean, Kamala, I think putting Kamala in a scene with anybody would be like fun. But yeah.
Yeah, because she's such a fanboy.
Yeah.
God, I did have this thought, which I understand is cursed. I was like, oh my god, what if later in the season they have that dinner and fucking Captain Marvel is also, like, she's there also as a dinner guest? There's something really upsetting about the concept of seeing them in a scene together. I don't know why. She just seems like a character from such a different plane of existence. It'd be cool. It made my brain go, I don't know about that.
I feel like Captain Marvel for me only works when like really serious situations. Like in Endgame. I really liked her in Endgame, but like everything else I'm like been like pretty middling.
I really liked her standalone film, her debut. I thought that was really fun. Yeah.
It's like one of the only MCU films I've watched only once.
Oh, really? That's pretty telling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's the same thing with like
yeah, she's all right. Not as good. Yeah.
I was gonna say I think it's the same thing as Thor. Like some of the characters are too much to associate with regular humanity. So even just having Thor there for dinner with Daredevil, I think would feel just as odd as Ms. Marvel, and maybe or just as what's her face, and maybe having her and Thor together having dinner, maybe that would seem normal because they're on the same like power scale,
Yeah.
Well, I do like her and Thor like together. Like I think they would work well together. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually really liked Thor and Peter Quill, even if it was a bit tired by the time that we got more of that in that very bad Thor film. But new law dropped on that, by the way. So you know how like when we talked about that with Rye, we were like, why is this film so much worse than the other Thors? Basically, at the time that they were filming that, Taika Waititi was in an open relationship with Tessa Thompson and one of the other actresses. And based on some stuff that just came out, pretty much the whole time of that film, he wasn't really paying attention. He was just off, like, making out and having sex with these people. And, like, he just blew all this money to basically, like, have a vacation with his two hot girlfriends.
That is a wild story.
Which, when I read that, I was like, that explains a lot. Anyway, there's just a fun little drop on Marvel. I was gonna say.
Now, do you hate that as an artist, or do you respect that as a male?
I respect the fuck you to Disney. As a socialist, I respect the fuck you to capitalism. As someone who is socially progressive and sex positive, do whatever you like. As someone that had to watch that fucking film, not a huge fan of the outcome of that, unfortunately. What I was going to say is the one thing that does make me think that the Captain Marvel Daredevil dinner could work is I've talked about this before a little bit in the season 4 perspective discussion, which is I played the Marvel Midnight Suns game by Firaxis, which is the company that did XCOM. And I actually played that game twice. That's how good it is. And that game lets you befriend you know, you basically, the world ends and you're there with like the remnants of the Avengers and a bunch of other B characters trying to save the world and bring it back. And Captain Marvel is one of those characters. And in the run I did recently, I was actually able to encourage her and Blade to have this budding romance. And Blade is such a different character to Captain Marvel. And the way that they tackled that with the writing really, really worked and was really, really compelling. So I think it could work. It's just, it's difficult to imagine putting an actor who does big acting as well as Brie Larson does in a scene with Charlie Cox, who does small acting so well. I just think you would need a really strong director to pull that off, you know? Yeah. Or a radically different
Another
setting,
thing I thought,
you know?
this is really goofy. Not that that would surprise you, but I was, what was the banker's name? Yusuf?
Mm-hmm.
When he found the gem in the candy bowl, I was like, he's just gonna eat it. Like, that is the worst place that you could put a piece of valuable stuff is in a candy bowl.
Oh, it's fine. It'll come
Like,
out the other
Americans
end.
just be eating that stuff. We're not looking at it. We're just putting handfuls in our mouth.
This is a question. I don't really, I'm not a big snack. I'm not a snacky guy. We've talked about this. This is known ZeroIndent lore. I'm not a big snacker, okay? I respect people that snack. I respect the hustle. It's not for me. I'm not a snacker. And then we had this conversation on something, and I think it was one of our reactions or predictions episodes where me and Pat were both like, yeah, like I'll sometimes snack on like some blueberries or something, you know. But I'm not doing like a candy or like a packet of chips type of thing. I'll do some like salted cashews or salted peanuts if I'm having a beer, and I'm often having a beer, so that's like a good option. But like, I'm just not a snacky guy, and I said this in that recording, and someone DM'd me on Patreon and was like, oh my god, I feel so validated by this. I got this DM like 2 weeks ago, like this is recent. I must have been playing catch up. They're like, I've never felt more validated by anyone in my entire life. He's like, I come from a family of snackers, and I'm not a snacker. And they sent me this paragraph, and I'm not authed in with my two-factor, so I can't bring it up exactly, but it was basically like a very me type story where they're like, every time I go to my fucking parents' house for dinner with my siblings, they'll sit there for like 3 hours and they'll snack on little nuts and cashews and stuff like that. He's like, because I'm not a snacker, I sit there and I'm hungry by the time dinner arrives, but I'm not going to snack because I don't want to fill myself up, and also I'm not a snacker, and so I just have to be hungry while these motherfuckers do their thing. And I was like, bro, that's real. That's real.
And then I'm just imagining after this long ass paragraph, they're like, anyway, love your work.
Yeah. No, it'd be like, anyway, in episode 32, Darth said this, and actually, factually, you know, it'd be like a correct, well, actually correction. Yeah, sound off in the comments if you're a snacker or not a snacker. Keen to know where I'll put a poll up on YouTube. We'll find out. I feel like our audience would be, I don't know. I feel like they'd be anti.
I love how
I feel like it almost would have no relation to whether they would watch our content or not.
Or you could hear me trying to do the mental calculus to be like, what would be the connective tissue?
I don't remember what it was, but something that you said when we were talking yesterday, and I was like, I feel so validated right now. Thank you. And it was not at all related to snacking, but that's twice in 2 days that you've like validated someone's existence.
That
so
keeps
you're
happening.
on a roll.
Yeah, well, that keeps happening, and I keep getting annoyed because then the shows we're watching keep validating you as well, and I'm like, where's my validation? What is this? What was it? What? Oh, it was that you described there was two. It happened twice. One of them was when I described the Brisbane Metro, patreon.com/ZeroIndent, by the way, if you want to hear the discussion. It was when you described the Brisbane Metro as basically looking like a little train. And I was like, yeah. There was something else. There was one other one that you were like, no one's ever said that before. I can't remember what it was.
Oh, it was, I think it was about driving and how like you're so careful when you're driving because it's like everything's a threat and all this stuff.
That was weeks ago, dude. That was weeks ago. But that discussion, you can also
it was
hear
so validating.
You can also hear that
still
discussion
remember it.
at patreon.com/ZeroIndent. Do you guys have anything else on Daredevil, or should we get out of here?
Yeah, no, not really. It was just, I feel like, how many episodes are in the season? Like 18 or something?
9.
Right? 9. Oh, I don't know where I got that number from. Maybe that was like the original run of the show. I can't remember.
Yeah, so we've got
But like,
episode 6 and 7 next.
wait, 9. So there's only one more episode to be released then.
Yeah, because they're trying to get it all out before Andor.
Okay.
So then,
No, okay.
so our coverage for next time is episode 6 and 7. Then we're doing episode 8 as a standalone. Then we're doing episode 9 as a standalone. What were you going to say, Pat?
Just that if it was more episodes than that, I would understand the point of this episode. Yeah, you just like throw in a bottle episode, have a cameo or two. That would make sense to me, but
Yeah.
this episode just does nothing for the overarching plot. So
Well, it adds
Which
in the
I don't
gem,
mind.
which assumedly is going to be massively important later.
Obviously,
But
yeah,
they
it's a
could've done that a
diamond-based
different
show
way.
now. Yeah, this will be Fisk's bugbear. Maybe that's Vanessa's diamond or something. You know what I mean? Like, I could see them using it, or I could see them forgetting about it entirely. Also, prediction time. When do you guys think Matt is going to put on the frickin' armor? Is that finale material, or are they doing that next episode, do you think?
Well, he already put on a mask to fight in the bank robbery, so you could almost argue that he's put on the mask at this point, right?
Yeah, I said the armor specifically. Like,
Yeah, but
yeah. Sorry, I understand your point.
I'm-
And yes, I did note that as well. And it was red. Cheeky. Cheeky.
I may be an episode ahead, so I'll opt out of this.
Patrick Laverne. I will confess,
I
this,
did a sneaky.
this was the one time I almost did it. I finished this episode and I was in such a good mood. I was like, do I give myself a treat? Do I? And I was like, maybe I have a little nibble. You know what I mean? I have a little sample, and I didn't. I was gonna watch. I was like, maybe I'll just watch up to the opening credits. It doesn't have to be a meal. Okay. I'm just gonna open the fridge and I'm just gonna have a single piece of that leftover pizza. I'm not having lunch, but I didn't. I was good. You know, I stuck to my diet.
Very
Is that
good.
where this metaphor? Yeah, I stuck to my diet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Nailed it.
you know, we would not have to wait. We could go on and watch them all, and just next recording, we just go 6 hours straight.
You could just spoil it
them
for
all.
me. 6 hours straight. You think that is so optimistic? 6 hours? It would be like 12. What are you talking about? That'll do
Well,
it.
it very much depends on the episode, because we didn't talk hardly an hour on this bank robbery episode.
No, but I knew that was going to happen. That's part of how I've spaced out some of these. Is by putting them in pairs, it helps us have one-sided conversations where one episode may have less stuff. Although, like, maybe it'll just be a bit like the Defenders, where there will just be episodes where we're like, I don't know, I got nothing. And it's just me explaining the episode, and then that's the discussion. God, that Defenders coverage was cursed. Yeah, so next episode, we're talking about episodes 6 and 7. So if you're watching along, definitely give those a watch beforehand. Patrick, where can people find you? On the internet, if they're sitting there and they're like, I just don't have enough Patrick in my life, I want to hear his thoughts on film and philosophies and how stories work.
Oh my god, well, got a treat for you then. I have my own podcast. It's called A Method to the Madness. You can find it on the Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud. We have a website, amttm.com. You can find our socials and our episodes on there. We cover a lot of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul stuff, so if you like that, check it out.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a non-0% chance that you don't know what that is if you listen to this show. Hey, and who knows, maybe we'll record an episode this year. Anything could happen. You know, the future's uncertain. In these end times, anything could happen. Darth, what do you got? This is coming out tomorrow, so anything soon?
So nothing.
So is this another opportunity for me to grill you about not finishing any projects? Yes, it is.
Yeah, but I'm also very much looking forward to my last day of work is going to be the 5th, and at that point I will have no excuses for not getting things finished. So I am looking forward to that. And for any of my existing stuff, YouTube, Darth, DARTH''D. And also really exciting news about some new Zero Indent merch that's coming out, exclusive Funko. I don't know if the rest of you have heard about this yet.
This is why I said that Darth shouldn't be in charge of the merch department. And I was like, that should be a Patrick job or a Mitchie job. And I was outvoted because apparently this company's a fucking democracy now. Yeah, you can find that exclusive Funko Pop at underink.press. I'm also wearing merch. I've got the fuck capitalism on today. So
Yeah.
Pat's got the Daredevil and the details. If you want some merch to help support the show and get a thing in return for it, underink.press is where you can find all of that. We've got high quality, 100% cotton t-shirts with all kinds of fun things on them. There's a Felix Guattari shirt that just went up that has that quote about all of human and cosmic whatever it is, the famous one that I always fucking bang on about. Get that on a t-shirt with a cool, weird skeleton using a laptop. We got hoodies. You can find all my books there. If you want to help us more directly, you can head to patreon.com/ZeroIndent. And as I said, get that 10 plus year archive of old Patreon content plus what is currently fortnightly-ish. It's supposed to be monthly, but it's been more frequent lately. Patreon exclusive discussions. A bit more of the shape of the back half of this episode, where it's just kind of me and Darth and whoever's around shooting the shit, and then invariably coming to some meaningful conclusion about some part of our lives or some part of our experience with art. The companion episode for this discussion, as we already said, we talked about Star Trek, we talked about the Brisbane Metro, and then we got into a bit of a larger discussion about the nature of assimilation and why it's scary, and what things make us anxious in horror. And then off the back of that, we're planning on doing, I've just decided we're doing this, by the way, because we talked about it. We're going to do a Patreon exclusive discussion of the 2 episodes in season 2 of Doctor Who, The Empty Child, sort of 2-parter. And I'm going to drag Mitch into that because those episodes are great. And I'd love to do a proper discussion about it. So that will be the companion one for not next episode, but the episode after. So look forward to that.
Everyone lives. Just this once. Everyone lives.
Yeah, I always think about that when people say that Moffat's like a dark writer. I'm like, you remember his debut in Doctor Who was like, it had a happy ending. And then he keeps doing it. He does it in the fucking library episodes as well, where everyone gets saved at the end. And they'll get to live a happy forever life in the computer. Anyway, my obsession with Moffat aside.
That's what you took from that?
We gotta get out of here.
Trapped in the computer forever. Happy life.
With all of the books in the entire known everything that they can simulate. I'd call that a pretty happy life. Good. Anyway.
Such a book nerd. You're like trapped in the library forever, yes.
Sounds great. Yeah, I don't know what the problem is. Yeah. We gotta get out of here because I gotta edit this freaking thing. We will catch you guys in the next episode. We appreciate all of your support wherever you find this. If it's on your podcast catcher of choice, if it's on YouTube, leave a rating, leave a review. But more importantly, the best way to help the show out is to send it to someone you think might enjoy it. That one person in your life who's a nerd about things in the same way you are and likes these long-form discussions. Send it their way. Tell them why you enjoy it. We appreciate the heck out of it. We don't do any advertising of our show outside of our network, and we don't do any ads for other stuff. You don't have to, in the middle of the podcast, listen to an ad about joining the military or whatever. I don't subject you to that, and in exchange, all I ask is you give us a rating or a comment and send it to someone you think might enjoy it. That'll do it. We will catch you next time for... we're kind of building up toward the end of the show, you guys. Like, this is sort of... We're getting to the pointy end of things in a real way, which is pretty exciting. And, as we always say, it wasn't entirely unpleasant to see you again.